they call you out on your stuff when you don't want them to, and you're like, I really don't like how you're right.
Hey, that's our job.
Exactly. So, we're getting started. I'm 2 minutes late. I was meeting my mom, Consuela Angela Ruiz Barrios Hirschbach, German name. That's right. We can trace that to Prussia in 1890, and then the rest is Mexican. So as moms do, she wanted to point out everything that I wasn't doing correctly with my life, and I got a little bit distracted, and so we're back on the show. And I was trying to get some sympathy from the rest of the guys here, but they said that's what good moms do. So thanks, guys. A lot of sympathy from all of you. Really.
No problem.
I was hoping some of you go, that's not what good moms do. And everybody's like, that's what moms do. They call you out on your stuff and go, you're not doing this. No. Everyone else thinks I'm cool. Well, guess what? Anyways, we're going to get started with the show. Give me 2 minutes. I'll be right back. With us today is a special guest, Mr. Jeffersonian. Mr. Jeffersonian is from Colorado. He is a burgeoning American who has interest in independence. And he has, we talked, we're going to do an interview, but we're going to get into this today. There's a lot of interest in what's called national divorce. There's a lot of discussion about it. Certainly the meeting between a Colorado burgeoning secession group and Yes, California, well-established, one of the most well-established secession groups, is not coincidental, given that during this week we saw Sarah Silverman, and then many conservatives and people around America say, let's have a national divorce, let's go ahead and do it. And we don't think that's coincidental. It also happens the same week, this week, where New Hampshire is the second state in America to actually legally process an article for secession in their government. So they actually got someone who's an official politician to propose it. That is the second state since 1860, basically, who's done anything through the legal process to get any elected official to actually start tracking these ideas through the actual system to make it happen. Now, it's a long shot, but New Hampshire did it this week. Texas did it a few months before. You have to go back about 130 years to find other examples. And so, Mr. Jeffersonian, we're glad you're here. We don't think it's coincidental or accidental that we're talking at this time right now. And let's add it up to, we're also going to cover this. We had said here at Yes, California, first, Joe Biden is like Donald Trump. And whether you like them, Californians do not like Donald Trump. And we were saying, hey, there's a lot of things you didn't like Trump. Biden's doing the same thing. And so for Californians, they would say Donald Trump's an anathema. He's a fluke. It was rigged. He doesn't represent real America. When he was president, you'd often hear people in California say a minority of Americans supported him. Not true. All the studies showed about 48% of America, half, basically backed this man for the last 4 years. We were told Joe Biden's going to be different, a return to decency. And then Joe Biden does a lot of the same stuff Trump did. We were one of the first groups doing that. We were out here in liberal California saying that. Got to tell you, that went wildly unpopular with other liberals out here. But now we have the government of France literally saying the same thing that Yes, California said months ago, when we were the only ones saying it and everybody was laughing at us. And now the prime minister of France is comparing Trump and Biden, just as we've done months ago. And as a secession movement, we love it when we're called, a lot of people think that we're crazy. And so what we've done is we've leaned into that, and we make outrageous statements that backed upon research and facts, and we say it way before anybody else, and they think that's crazy. And then it becomes what happened in reality. And all that trash talk, all those people have to come back to us and go, wow, I guess I got it wrong. And then we also get to say, remember how you guys said we didn't know what we were talking about when we said this, and then it turned out to be totally true? It's almost like we know what we're talking about. You just don't want to admit it. So maybe you should consider that when we talk about secession, because that was the other thing we were talking about for years, and you said that was crazy. And here's another thing. We call it being prescient, or prescient in the event horizon, basically. So as things are happening, you're able to make predictions that come to be true and are directly impactful on the events you're watching at that moment. Let me shut up for 2 minutes. Jason, Robert, Mike, please welcome our guest, Mr. Jeffersonian. introduce yourself, say hello. No, he does not share our political opinions on everything. And that's why we love him, because he was willing to work with someone that he does not ideologically agree with so that we could have what we call a peaceful separation. That has been the goal of Yes California for years. So let's live up to it. Please introduce yourself to Mr. Jeffersonian. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Robert. I'm the co-committee chair for the Tuesday meetings at Joint International and Domestic. Nice. Hi.
Absolutely. Well, thank all of y'all for having me on. As Marcus said, I'm probably pretty far to the right of you guys, but I do think, regardless of your political affiliation, the general government has gotten to a point it's not representative of anybody. So wherever we can make alliances, I'm all about it.
Yeah, I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm Jason Wright, the other of the co-chair of the International Issues and Domestic Issues Joint Committee. It's where we basically discuss kind of what's going on here or around the world and how it's affecting us and possibilities of what we can do. As far as left-leaning, right-leaning, I'm also more to the right of most folks because I'm green, so I'm in the middle. I've got a lot of family from Texas, so I don't really have a problem with someone based on their political leaning. I base it more on, are you a decent human being or not?
Right, for sure, and that definitely, I think we're losing sight of that. So that's good to hear.
Mike, you there? You want to do an introduction?
Yeah, hey, I'm Anonymous Mike. I don't ever speak when we're recording. And yeah, we're actually, speaking of political affiliations, we're trying to get away from it. And my recommendation is no political affiliations. We're all issue-based. But I think we're trying to do something else. You want to talk about that a little bit, Jason, or anybody?
Yeah, that is a perfect segue. Man of few words, and when he uses them, they get right to the point. We're actually currently looking into formation of our own political party, and it's going to be apolitical. And we're not going to mandate that, someone who maybe identifies or has, been a part of some other political party. We're not going to mandate that they just totally drop all of everything that they've been into and been believing for, however many years, possibly their whole life. The only thing we're really interested in is, do they agree that there are problems, that we could fix them, and that we should fix them? Pretty much it. Do we want better? If the answer is yes, then...
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that's an interesting approach, but if you have a tent that's that large, how do you keep the ideological differences from creating factions within and then kind of devolving back to what we have?
Well, that's a good question. Ours is pretty much, it's contained by the confines, the borders of California. So if you're in California and our model could end up being adapted on a larger scale, right? Like the Green Party has gone international. Not too many political parties go international. We could maybe one day get there. To start, it would be just for California and just focused on political figures and candidates who are here in California running for something or currently holding something here in California. And all of our do you want better and do we have issues but we could fix them. Some folks fall into the California is sinking boat. I'm in the America is sinking and California is the lifeboat boat. But we call it the steamship Calexit.
Okay.
Some folks fall into the too hopeful, right? So they're the ones who are too pessimistic, and then there are the ones who are too optimistic. I'd say the corporate Dems who just cannot admit sometimes, right? There may be a good example of what it looks like when people are too optimistic about something they shouldn't be. What we want to do with our thing, with our apolitical party, is basically to unite California's politics, not in favor of a red, a blue, a green, just in favor of all of California.
Okay, let me jump in here. Sounds like it was getting interesting. So thank you, Jason. Yeah, he's covering one of our projects. Let's see here. You on Odyssey? No, but we're looking into that. We're going to cover that. Media said not to, though. I'm not sure what that means, Jack B. But we are going to look on. So let's get right into it. And this really because Mr. Jeffersonian is here, and I really wanted to hit on this. So I'm going to do a share screen. And here we go. And for me, this is the big news for today. So if you go and you type in national divorce on Twitter, can everybody see this? It should be the Google interface.
Yes, I can.
Yep.
See it.
Thanks. So if you type in national divorce and you do past week, so not last year, not past month, not any time, past week, national divorce on Twitter, and I'll show you. Here we go. Boom! National divorce, national divorce, national divorce, national divorce, national divorce, national divorce, no, national divorce, Sarah Silverman, national divorce. So what happened was Sarah Silverman said, let's have a national divorce. And maybe she was joking, but then a hell of conservatives started coming out and go, I agree, let's just do this. Let's go for it. So here's just one example. National divorce way ahead of you. This is this week, and I don't know if they'll have the link, but they're talking about Silverman. And here's Michael Malice, national divorce. I can't see travel around, national divorce, etc. In the other news, here is it's true. France says U.S. Biden acted like Trump. So we have been saying that to Californians, and I'm not asking anyone to agree, but to Californians, they said Trump is horrible and he's bad and he's an aberration and doesn't represent America. And here in Calexit, we said Trump is America. That's why we want to leave. This is who you share the country with. And we've been saying that since 2017, because we looked at the actual polling data and it was like, Trump won the election fair and square. Nobody wanted to hear that because they thought Russia rigged everything. Then it turns out maybe they did, but they didn't change any of the votes. And then Trump almost won by 48% in 2020. And then Joe Biden came on the scene and he was immediately backing Trump on climate change, fracking, kids in cages, et cetera. And you go, look, this is America. This is who they are. It's not just a Trump thing. This is the USA. Here's the good guy. doing the same stuff as the horrible guy. If the bad guy and the good guy are doing the same things, that means there's a tie between them, which would be, this is what America likes, which is not what Californians are okay with. Stop acting like it's a fluke. America picked him in 2016 and almost picked him in 2020. So this is who the USA is. In 2016, Trump only lost the national popular vote because of California, which we said means outside of California, over half of America likes this guy. So Californians, you are sharing a country where half the population is all about this. And then we said that with Biden. Nobody wanted to hear that. Everybody said you're crazy. And then now here's France months afterwards saying, yeah, that's true.
Can I interject as the person who came up with the slogan of Biden, just another shade of Trump?
Sure.
So the key thing for Calexit here, the key thing for anyone in the United States who does not want the Trumpism, Bidenism kind of turning out to be true, that they are one and the same. This new face of America, anyone who doesn't like it, who wants a legal, peaceful means of getting out, really, really pay attention to this fact. We know the DNC will prop up their incumbent president for a second term. This is pretty much like, this is a 99% guarantee. It doesn't matter that he's been losing popularity. It doesn't matter he's been proving himself to be very much a different face of the old boss. They are going to prop him up. And then on the other side, I have friends who vote for Trump who are hardcore Republicans, and they're my friends. And I know through them, since January, Trump and Trump organization has been putting out mass emails to their fan base, letting them know he will be running in 2024. The media is still playing around with maybe he's gonna run. It's not a maybe. He's been saying it since he left office that he is going to run again because legally he can.
So how does that relate to national divorce?
Unpopular Biden, who is a different shade of Trump, versus Trump, who is the Trump shade of Trump. That's what we have to look forward to in our next general presidential election here for the United States of America. It is going to be that. And then we look at the midterms, which are much closer, and we already know that's looking really sketchy already. So I'm pretty sure we got another 4 years of Trump coming. If you want to get out, now is the time. Read over what we do, what we've said, and what we've been about for the last, 6-8 years now. The website, I think, is still down, but once the website, yescalifornia.org, is back up, go there, watch through the videos. Lots of them are hours long, but it's just packed with information. That's what we do.
Absolutely. And Marcus, can I piggyback real quick?
Why don't we just finally just...
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's funny because, and Marcus, you and I talked a little bit about this the other day when we first met, but what I find hilarious is that everything that Trump was accused of doing, Biden is praised for actually doing, like with his edicts that came out on September 9th, that is literal fascism. And for full disclosure, I'm not a Trump supporter. I wrote in Rand Paul.
You can be a Trump supporter. We don't care, brother. It's fine.
Oh, no. I'm just saying for everybody else listening, I'm not going to sit here and try to defend Trump because Lord knows he had his problems. But when it comes to the two-party system, especially when you start talking about at a federal level, to me, the real problem is it's not representative of anybody. Obviously, y'all are not getting what you want out of Joe Biden or what you may have hoped for out of Joe Biden. I'm sure people on the right feel like they didn't get what they necessarily wanted out of Trump. But when we start talking about how to fracture power, and I'm going to bring this up, John C. Calhoun said it the best. The real problem is when you have a two-party system, the majority party is always going to trample the Constitution whenever it suits their needs, while the minority party is going to stand there and screech about it. But then when the roles reverse, it's a vicious cycle, because now it's like all the precedents that the majority party set first, well, now the minority party on the ascendancy can take advantage of all of that. And so to me, that's where, regardless of political beliefs, that's where the real value is in any sort of national divorce or secession movement, is because you return those decisions to their localities. And that's the best that we can possibly hope for, in my opinion.
Well, let me ask you, do you think do you see the upward trend in national divorce? So Biden was elected. People were talking about division. I think the Democratic Party up into the election in 2020 was even talking about how they were wargaming out a scenario where the entire West Coast would secede because Trump won. And you had Democratic officials talking about this. And they weren't saying they backed secession, but it was this kind of threat of secession if they lost the election. And then we go to, okay, well, Trump didn't win, and it's going to be national unity, and everybody's going to come together. And then it's months later, and clearly there's no unity, no cohesion, no building back as a community. And then this week we see, someone makes a joke, and then people just go all in on national divorce. Does it seem like the climate's getting worse? Things are not getting better? Or that we're going to magically come back together somehow next week when we couldn't pull it off in the last almost year?
No, we're beyond coming back together, just in terms of being able to live peaceably under one side's edicts being forced on the other. But to me, I think the real problem is kind of overcoming. I'm going to call it Calhoun's paradox. Is yes, the Democrats were definitely saying that. I do remember those articles talking about wargaming and getting ready to break away and stuff like that. But as soon as their guy won, it's back to business as usual. So we have to come up with a way that's the real challenge, in my opinion, at least right now, is we have to come up with a way to say, hey, all that stuff you were saying when you were in the minority party, why don't you stick to it when you have the power to actually do it? And there is a lot of momentum. So one of the books I read recently was by what I would consider like an arch neocon, basically. F.H. Buckley wrote American Secession. And when you have voices that prominent in the conservative movement who are finally kind of breaking away from their Lincolnian vision, I think there's hope on that side. Now, from the left side, and I haven't gotten to read this book yet, it's actually on my bookshelf, but you have Richard Kreitner's Break It Up. And there you go. You got a very powerful and prominent left-wing perspective and a very powerful and prominent right-wing perspective. So I think people are finally starting to get used to the idea, and I do think it's becoming normalized now. And again, to me, it's really going to boil down to, for the people who actually wield the reins of power, how do you solve Calhoun's paradox to get the majority party to actually follow through on that stance?
One thing I'd like to point out is that we have personally talked to Kreitner and Buckley here at Yes, California. Both of their books, as you said, a progressive and a conservative, both say that Calexit's the most likely secession movement to pull it off. So glad you brought those books up, because they mention us and say we're likely to secede. And, Calhoun was, say what you will about slavery, it was bad, but Calhoun understood the law at that time, and there was some legal allowance, it appears, for states to leave. My most famous example that I love was New Hampshire in 1813. Met with the British to discuss seceding from America and rejoining the British Empire. And no one said, you can't do that, or that's illegal to even discuss that, and you can't leave. And that was done at the time where the founding fathers would still be alive. So we
Right.
know there was a secession movement. We know the founding fathers were alive at that time, and we know they said absolutely nothing about it going into it. Regardless, one of the things we try to point out here is that the Civil War did not settle the secession issue Texas versus White did. And Texas versus White came after the Civil War. It was the only Supreme Court case on secession, and it said you can secede with consent.
Well, but interesting thing about that case actually wasn't about secession. It was about bonds, and they tied secession into it. But my outlook on that is that particular case had happened in 1869, just 4 years after the war had ended. If they had not ruled the way they did, that literally would have invalidated everything that the Union war effort did to the South, and it would have invalidated everything about Reconstruction up to that point. So I mean, when we look at it from that perspective, they were never going to rule another way. But to your point about the founders, I think it's interesting because Thomas Jefferson's first inaugural address, have you ever read that?
No.
Very interesting. So there's a section in there, just for some context. At that point, there were a major faction of the Federalist Party in New England who were openly calling for secession. They saw Thomas Jefferson basically as the Antichrist. And Jefferson, upon winning that election, in his first inaugural, he actually says, for those who would want to break away, let them go. Basically, let reason be free to combat bad ideas. If they want to leave, fine, let them leave. We think it's a mistake, but they have every right to do it. And then all the way up through the Hartford Convention in 1814, you have a bunch of prominent New Englanders, Timothy Pickering being one of them, who were openly calling for secession because of the War of 1812. They basically said that the South was dominating the general government up to that point, and that New England was paying for it in their shipping industry. So that's one of the major points of the Hartford Convention, but it ended up being taken over by moderates, and what they officially proposed instead was just a huge list of constitutional amendments, basically to say one section cannot have power. But there are, excuse me, not that one section cannot have power, but that one section cannot have perpetual power. And that kind of brings us again, in my mind at least, back to Calhoun's paradox, is because when the Virginian Republicans had the chance to really implement all of these decentralist ideas, they still didn't do it. I mean, it was not under the Federalist Party that we got all the massive internal improvement bills, the War of 1812, so on and so forth. No, it was the Jeffersonian Party in power. And allegedly, even when you have a party that dedicated to the principles of decentralization and you still can't do it, yes, it does kind of throw a damper on it. But I think we've reached a point now where maybe mutual hatred is strong enough to where it's like, okay, go in peace. Like, I wish you nothing but the best in this breakup. And we can talk about all kinds of stuff outside of politics. But when it comes to political solutions, I think the hatred has finally gotten to be mutually strong enough to where both sides will listen. And I hope that's true.
I love it. Let's go to comments from the group, specifically on the topic of what Jeffersonian man is saying. Like, has the hatred gotten big enough to where, this is this could happen? I mean, is that what we're witnessing right now? And then we'll go on to the next topic about New Hampshire secession with a long-term Calexit partner, Elliot Axelman. Thoughts? Are we boiling over? Is this now the time? Are we seeing that, or hyperbole? What say you, group? Robert? Jason? Or anyone in the comment land? Anyone in comments, if you'd like to make a comment?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Mr. Jeffersonian was saying there. I like that we are able to provide a sane, rational discussion about this and have sane, rational, legal, peaceful options that we can put up on the table. Because I agree, the level of separation and division has been growing for some time. And we all know, we actually even had our dissection of the Civil War and what really were the starting points for it, right? The piece of legislation that one state passed that allowed them to enact their laws on all the others. So,
and I'll throw my 2 cents. I'm sorry.
Just real quick. We had Cassandra just join, and for everybody else joining in, what we're talking about is this real quick so that everybody can follow along. National divorce is exploding right now. So Sarah Silverman, who works for a Disney company, talked about let's just have a national divorce this week. And if you do a search for this week, it comes up. There's just a ton of people now talking about national divorce. So with us today, because we have contacts around America, is Mr. Jeffersonian, a Colorado secession backer. And so a bunch of Californians talking to a Colorado secession backer this week while national divorce is blowing up in the news. Also, just to add this in, Tim Pool is a famous YouTuber. You can like him or not, whatever. He's got a big channel, and he's talking about national divorce this week. So are we witnessing a turning point on national divorce? America did not achieve unity under Biden. Things are getting worse. They saw the failure in Afghanistan. They've seen this failure along the border. We just had the French government compare Biden to being as incompetent as Donald Trump. There's literally no unity. And now we're talking about national divorce all over the place. Someone made a joke, but a lot of people took it up. So is this the time of national divorce, or is it just, people blowing off steam? Mr. Jason, sorry about that, Jason. I just want to get some context. Jason Wright.
Yeah, well, just to finish it up, I would say that I'm glad that we have this legal, peaceful route to take, and that we've explored it and fine-tuned it enough that we here at Yes actually already, we've laid out the path, the do's and don'ts, and it is what could prevent the escalation into another actual civil war. Not that there's anything civil about it, just that it would actually become a war. And it does seem, both sides. I have heard people on the far right say things, but I'm like, whoa. And then I've heard people counter from the far left and say things of equal weight, value, and atrocity. And I'm like, whoa, hey, come on, people. Let's be rational now before, bombs start flying, please.
So I think everyone agrees, right? We're saying maybe divorce isn't the best, but if things keep going to this point where people are going to start shooting each other, nobody wants that. So as we've said it years, is like Jason pointed out, let's have a peaceful divorce rather than a violent marriage.
Right. And so that's what I was going to say is amongst the people, I think the time is right. And I want to address those comments from Margaret Hall. So using hatred to benefit a political ideology is farcical. What is rational about using hatred? It's not necessarily, I wouldn't say using hatred, but the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, the cold hard fact of the matter is, the more you forcefully hold this thing together, the more you will see real violence. So if we can use things to say, look, if California wants to have, let's say, universal health care, but Kansas does not, for example, or Colorado does not, then yes, we can use that to further drive the wedge, because then the people can put pressure on their representatives to say, support this. But again, for me, it's going to be all about trying to figure out how do we actually get the cretins in D.C. to submit to the will of the people. And that's the part right now. I have not been able to square that in my own mind, but whoever does it, I don't think there should be any violent response to it. If California is the first to do it, absolutely, by all means, please, I wish y'all all the best in whatever path you choose to take. But again, how do we, I think for me at least, the conversation now is how do we get the general government to actually listen to the demands of the people? But amongst the people, amongst the masses, yes, I do think the time is now, and it's becoming a very mainstream topic.
Well, maybe we should go into some of the details, Marcus.
What do you mean by that?
Petitions, blue ribbon panel for exploratory commission.
Yeah. Well, let me throw you a couple more news items because it all relates to this, and then we'll answer that question. Good question. I just want to show you all, if I may have your permission, Mr. Jeffersonian, may I have your permission to show you a few more news items, and then we'll have a big, robust discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's get a few more comments in. So, approaching at ludicrous speed. Jack B, you're right. It's approaching at ludicrous speed. You're totally right. And the next one's
watch out for when you've gone full plaid.
Yeah, because the next is plaid, and then nobody likes that. Personally, I'm a pinstripe guy, so it's going to be bad. Let me show you a few more items here. Please post comments. We are having a discussion with the Colorado Secession group. Mr. Jeffersonian, he's starting up. We're talking about secession across America and the fact that national divorce is exploding in popularity. Right now, we are not taking a stance on other states seceding. We're just covering the possibility of independence for California. So as we showed you, Tim Pool's talking about a civil war is coming. He's a very famous YouTuber. 1.2 million people, about 300,000 saw that article. He was talking about how the Atlantic magazine last month, this is a well-respected policy magazine amongst all the elites on the planet, talking about maybe the U.S. can't come back together. Here's one that we wanted to talk about here in New Hampshire. This is the second state ever since 1800s to get secession in the legal system. Now, no, they haven't made it law, but like Texas, they were able to get secession up for discussion by officials in their government. So they are officially discussing secession in the Texas government and now in New Hampshire. We at Yes California are working on having an interview with Mike Sylvia, who has proposed a constitutional amendment, or what we would call a initiative. They're saying a referendum there. We called ours a referendum, but we used the California initiative process. So here's New Hampshire doing what we did here in Calexit for years, propose a change to the Constitution through an initiative or referendum process. They were able to get a representative to propose this. Now, the people who proposed it, this is where it comes in, was a group called Liberty Block. Yes, California has been working with Liberty Block for 3 years. We recently met with the Texas Nationalists, the other largest secession movement in America, live on film because of the Liberty Block. So here's the Liberty Block. They're hanging out with Yes California. They're hooking up California secessionists with Texas secessionists. Now they're literally borrowing our Yes California proposal for how to achieve secession and getting official government representatives to propose this. And these people learned it from us and have been working with us for about 3 years. And again, right when national divorce is going nuts. So just wanted to add that in. We've been working with people. New Hampshire is going towards secession. Texas is going towards secession. Yes, California is the only group with contacts to them. They're also looking at a joint board of secession movements across America. Mr. Jeffersonian, if there is a council of legal, peaceful secession advocates, do you think you might be willing to join something like that and represent your great state?
Would I personally? Yes, absolutely, because the more we can spread the idea, right now, that to me is the most important thing, is continue building it with the masses, and then from there trying to figure out how do you get the general government to not take Lincoln's approach whenever it happens.
Okay, you heard it here first. Yes, California making inroads to Texas and New Hampshire. Other secession movements who are having success hung out with Yes California, learned from us, and like speaking with us. I guess maybe we're decent humans then. Maybe we know a little bit about where we're talking about. Who? Please make a comment, whoever that was.
Sorry, that was my background feed.
Oh, Well, Cassandra, they're like, what do you think here? Secession, New Hampshire, Texas, Colorado, national divorce in the news, Tim Pool talking about it, the Atlantic magazine. Just fluff? It'll blow
Can't
over?
forget Alaska and Hawaii.
Yeah.
Well, I think honestly, if that many states are talking about it, it's a very viable option at this point. And I'm surprised actually that New Hampshire is pushing so hard for this, and that they've actually got, the bills out and they're trying to make it something the public can actually openly vote on and choose for. So yeah, I'd love to get a chance to speak with the people in New Hampshire that are running that. We have one from Colorado here, which is already excellent. Nice to meet you. And yeah, Texas as well. It's looking good. I mean, we're getting kind of sick of getting beaten and battered around by the federal government. And if there's anything we can do to even try to fight back, this is probably one of the first steps. So yeah, independence is going to become one of our strongest factors in the future. Coming up real quick here.
Mr. Jeffersonian, thoughts?
No, I definitely agree. If we can get a conglomeration going, that's the main thing. But like I said, for me, it's all going to come down to what does the general government respond with. But as far as everything else amongst the people, yes, and even as we're seeing with New Hampshire, even in state legislatures and Texas, this is gaining steam. But how do we get them to do this peacefully at the top? Not to say that it can't be done, but history is not necessarily our friend on this particular issue here, regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, so to speak. So I think the more that we can, again, kind of help fester some issues, like I think you got to argue with the left from the left, and likewise, I think you got to argue with the right from the right. Like a lot of the people who support Texas that I've talked, or Texit that I've talked to, you talk about border security, you pretty much have them in the palm of your hand. Whereas, with places like California, I'm sure if we start bringing up universal access to healthcare, universal systems, stuff like that, they're going to be a lot more willing to hear what we have to say. So the more that we can find common ground and then kind of use the differences that we do have to help widen the gap, I think the better it will be at the individual level.
I don't want to get involved. This is a good discussion, everybody.
Yeah, I agree. And to piggyback off of that, last statement with Texas, they're going through some pretty serious border crisis right now near the Rio Grande with the Haitian immigrants coming through. So yeah, there's definitely something to be done about that. And people are starting to notice, and it's becoming a serious problem, especially with our borders being as open as they are right now.
Yeah, well, and that town, Del Rio, it's only got a normal population of 36,000, and they have about 12,000 migrants there right now. So yeah, that is a huge issue for the people of Texas. Now, I'm going to take this in a slightly different direction, but for all the governors out there, they need to start using nullification, and the state legislatures use nullification. That is, every time it's been tried in the United States, it has worked. Now, granted, during the nullification crisis, Andrew Jackson almost caused a war over that. But ultimately, South Carolina got exactly what they wanted. The tariff rate was drastically lowered from what it had been. So every time it's been tried, Wisconsin with the Fugitive Slave Act, Wisconsin basically nullified that by passing personal freedom laws. And so there's a lot of historical context for nullification. So governors need to start using that. They are there to govern on behalf of the people of their states, not to fall lockstep with whoever in DC is telling them to do this or do that.
Well, and I agree, and I would also slightly counter, but only slightly, that, so at one point, Gavin Newsom had locked down California, closed the borders. We were not going to let anyone from any of the other states in, and we weren't letting anyone out because we had coronavirus and it was kicking off, and it wasn't a widespread, rampant thing throughout all of the U.S. at that point. And that was actually, as we've seen with like New Zealand, the island of Kauai in Hawaii, they locked down and had the desired effect, corona free until they opened up their borders and started taking people in. You allow contagion to come in. That's what happens. You want to answer? That's how you get it.
Let's be cautious about talk, please. Sorry.
Okay, so I would just
Gentle
say that there have been governors on both sides, both red and blue, who have tried to do things to basically meet the ends of nullification of this, that, the other for whatever means. And the federal government keeps saying, no, you can't. That's unconstitutional. You want to shut down the borders and prevent this thing? You can't do that. That's unconstitutional. Oh,
I'm going to rebut there. I'm going to rebut there real quick.
Well, let's hear from our guest.
Okay.
Sorry, Jason. I just want to, we want like having guests. So I know we talk about this one because Mr. Jeffersonian, I hope what you're going to find out is we have some Trump supporters here. We have some conservatives here. We have a lot of Bernie Sanders people, and we're generally California values, but we're respectful, and we believe in this idea of having a conversation with people, even if we don't agree with them. And we're not like the rest of CA. We love CA, but we'll actually think we have to talk to people in America to achieve political change.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just going to be hurting each other. So please, I hope you find that we're being good gracious. Yes.
No, I'm loving
and invite others. We want you to invite more conservatives to come out and talk with us because we're the ones you can talk to. Sorry, Jason. Let's hear from Jeffersonian and we'll go right back to Jason.
So, Jason, to your point with California shutting the border down to other people from the United States, nullification does have its limits. Anything that is constitutional, you don't have much of a ground to stand on. But what California could have did, and actually Gavin Newsom did do this, which cruise ship was it? Was it the Princess? Which cruise ship was it that he refused to let dock there?
I forget the name, but I remember, yeah.
Yeah, so now he had every right to do that because the state owns the ports. But when we're being forced to stay together now, and again, this is why we're having this conversation because we want everybody to go off and do their own thing. But to the extent that we're forced to be together, as long as California is a member of the union, then no state could shut its borders down. I mean, look, I'm sure people in Texas would probably love to shut down the border to people from California, but they, at least as it currently stands, they cannot do that right now legally. Now, where nullification can shine, though, is, and Marcus and I were actually talking about this the other day, where nullification can shine. Jason, I don't know where you fall on gun rights, but there recently was a federal judge who overturned from the bench, which is illegal in and of itself, but he overturned from the bench a California assault weapons ban. He had no authority to do that. Now, California can definitely say, because of the slaughterhouse cases, basically confirming that the 14th Amendment did not incorporate the Bill of Rights, California does not have anything about gun rights in its state constitution. So California can just say, okay, well, federal judge, thank you for your opinion, but we're going to ignore that because per our state constitution, there's no limit on us from doing this.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. I'm not anti-gun. I'm pro-sane and reasonable gun legislation that will allow people to have whatever they want to have within reason. And part of that within reason is like a safety thing. No one needs a Browning M60. Would I like one? Sure. Oh, yeah. Do I need one? No. Would I ever use it for hunting? Oh, hell no. Because, you're not really going to have much deer after that. I'm not anti-gun. I just don't. One, I know people personally who I'm like, this person should never, ever have like a weapon of any kind, let alone a firearm. I know some people like that. I also know some people who have way more guns than like a town would ever need. It's not reasonable, right? How many assault rifles can you really hold at one time and fire? 2 if you're Scarface. within reason, right? We don't need people having bazookas and anti-aircraft guns and tanks and Harrier jump jets.
Let's get back on the.
Yeah, sorry. So I agree that California is this interesting place because most of California isn't really, it's perceived as anti-gun, but most of California isn't really anti-gun. It's just pro-sensible legislation. And as you pointed out, we had something that was like sensible and reasonable. Well, yeah, if you're hunting, you don't need something that holds like 300 rounds. That's more for like war. And, you know, when you've got a sea of enemies coming at you, which is not California.
Okay. Hey,
I have something to add on that too.
Yeah, Cassandra.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, so, and I mean, whether California is perceived anti-gun or pro-gun, I believe what people are most concerned about right now is the legislation being forcibly pushed through to change the laws. So whether you stand for it or not, there still are constitutional rights being infringed upon these laws right now. And that's not just with the gun laws. So, I mean, I believe that's the kind of point you were trying to make on that, on just whether you're for it or against it. We need to all realize that the way it's being handled is, I don't want to say necessarily, we'll call it unreasonable means and borderline illegal, because you're not necessarily allowed to just push things through like that. So, and there's been plenty of laws in the last year and a half that not a lot of Californians have been happy with. So, gun laws aside, yeah, they cannot be allowed to be pushing these through without consent.
Right. Well, and not just that. For me, the more pressing point that I wanted to make is that federal judge had no authority to do that. That was a California state law. And we can go back and look at all different kinds of records from the state conventions and from the Philadelphia Convention. John Marshall himself said that the states, being sovereign, could not be hauled before the court. And therefore, you were not supposed to have judicial review or federal judicial review of state laws. That was all supposed to happen at the state level. So now if a California judge had made that decision, hey, that's subject to your guys' constitution, Marcus, whatever it says there. But, we see other really great examples of this. Every state who's legalized marijuana, every single state who has legalized marijuana, that's a huge middle finger of nullification to the general government, because that's still a Schedule I drug per their classification. They've been powerless to stop that. Colorado's got it.
The Marijuana Stamp Act still has not been fully undone. Right.
And so, Colorado has it. I think, what is it, like 30 states now have legalized marijuana in some capacity, if it maybe a little bit more. Mm-hmm. So we see real world examples of nullification put into practice. Now we just need to get people used to going to that next step and saying, all right, now's the time. If y'all want everything you want, you can have it overnight. All you have to do is say, okay, we're no longer going to be part of this union.
Let me show you all something real quick. We just got this in from Robert. Robert, I'm going to call on you if you want. So here's Matt Walsh. And he did, who is Matt Walsh? Matt Walsh is he has a TV show and covers politics. Might be time for a national divorce. That's what he's talking about. And here's a poll he just did. Should the United States stay together, break apart? 61% break apart, stay together 39%. I understand it's only 918 people, but, that's happening now. Mr. Jefferson.
If I wasn't in StreamYard, I would go over and cast my yes vote.
Yeah. Let me put the link up to that tweet. It's in the private chat. Robert, what do you think about that?
Yeah, the voting is closed, but it does appear to be going. This national divorce is going viral on Twitter from Sarah Silverman to a lot of Trump supporters. So yeah, it's not explicitly Calexit, but it makes the point.
It's support for the idea. And I don't find it a coincidence that there's lots of talk about national divorce, and we're having a conversation with a group out of Colorado, who I've never met before in my last week. And this is the exact same week that New Hampshire is able to get something passed into law. And this is the exact same week that, it's like there's too many coincidences. Talking about national divorce, it blows up. Here's another secessionist group launching. Here's another one getting some progress on their things in a way nobody's done since 1860. And it all just coincidentally happens this week. I don't buy that. What's going on here? Is this the turning point, or are we just getting ourselves worked up over steam?
Well, Marcus, and I'm sure you may have covered this on your show. I've been trying to get caught up, but if y'all covered it, I didn't see it. What was that poll, maybe back at the beginning of August, end of July, that surveyed, it was like 66 of Southern Republicans were in favor of secession, and then I want to say it was about 48% of West Coast Democrats were in favor of it?
Right. Let me pull that up. There was a poll a few months ago showing 42% of West Coast Democrats were for secession. And that made national news.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. They should probably do another repolling, because as Biden has been tanking on several major issues recently since then, I think we may be finding ourselves near or over that 50% mark.
There it is. 47% of West Coast Democrats say, let's go ahead and secede. 66% of Republicans. That was, I think, only 2 months ago. This is what he's talking about.
Yes. And I want to touch on that particular article. So what I've found, I guess, kind of telling about that is, regardless of this 160-year experiment that we've had to try to force everybody into one, you still have regional differences. You still have regional differences. And the more that we try to force this, we've been saying this the whole show, the worse and worse that's going to get. But yes, see, there you go. So you have very distinct, even now, 160 years later, you have very distinct cultural identities in each one of those sections that do not necessarily play well together when they're forced to be in the same room.
That is a good way to put it.
Also worth pointing out, so this poll here, 47% Democrats, right, is Oregon, Washington, California. Well, 80% of the population for this poll was just here. So if we're looking at who they polled and what the numbers are, it was like a little bit here, maybe 5-7%, maybe 4-5%, and then 80-90% from here, population-wise, which means these numbers are probably higher than here in California because we dominated the weight. So this is really 47% of California Democrats, or 45, or maybe even 52%, somewhere around 40-ish, 45 to 52, maybe 2% points plus or minus, because this is 80% of the population of this particular subset.
Right. And something else too. So if we can look at the minority parties there, because that, Marcus, that was something you had actually asked me about when we did our meet and greet. So we see very, very little support in those minority parties. And with that, I think it's because we also need to guarantee, whether a right state or a left state does this, there needs to be some sort of mechanism in place to say, hey, if you are a political minority, you're not going to be snuffed out. And that's something else that, as I get more and more into this topic, we need to pay more attention to stuff like the concurrent majority. We need to understand that, yes, the political minority does have very real concerns, and we can't get carried away, I guess, in a French Revolution style, take it to the streets, chop off heads. So there needs to be some sort of guarantee that political minorities will have some level of protection, and I think we would even see those minority party numbers go a lot higher than what we saw in there.
The French Revolution was a scary, scary period, and I've routinely had nightmares of Robespierre and daydreams over the last year. I'm not joking. It's a little esoteric, but Robespierre was the leader of the French Revolution. Initially, he started, and maybe even was a good guy. at the beginning, according to the stories they told. But at some point, the power got to them, and they had a rush of success, and they didn't handle it well. And then they just started killing everybody. And the moral of the stories eventually came back around to him. You know, he was the AOC. Let's get him super radical. And then one day they go, let's get you.
Right.
And they just kind of self-disintegrated, and the whole thing fell apart. And then the French Republic was born out of that. But even they said, you know, there was too much excesses. And so when I see Jimmy Kimmel, who works for the Disney Channel, wish death on 48% of 360 million people, and there's no blowback by the Disney Channel, a family corporation. And then when I see Sarah Silverman, who also works for the Disney Channel, suggesting separation, I begin to think, well, I guess family-based corporations can now start talking about death on half the population in secession, and there's no blowback and there's no criticism from Disney at all. So I remember growing up with Disney movies, and it was like friendly and happy and family values. And if you said anything that hurt that image, you were destroyed. Now, I said 150 million people should just die in the streets. It's cool. I said, let's go ahead and secede and ban people from coming into our country. It's cool. So that's normal Frenchmen turning into Robespierre-esque inspired mob.
Right.
Folks, when people start talking about mass death, bad. Always bad. Never good, never cool, never, it's all right, always bad. Well, that's happening and no one's saying nothing. So you add that on top of national divorce.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to hint to earlier when I was saying I've heard people on far one side say some things that I'm like, whoa there, buddy. And then it's countered by people on the opposing far end saying pretty much the same thing, just back at them. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. This is not sane, rational behavior. This only leads to one place, and that's not good.
Yeah. And most rational people right now, to piggyback on all three of your last statements, is, yeah, the divisiveness politically has basically destroyed the mentality of the American voter. So not only are we going to see a huge increase in those third parties, generating like more people and having more support, but yeah, most people don't even want to be associated with the Democrat or Republican Party anymore. And that when it becomes so blatant and openly aggressive on both sides like that, I mean, the divorce generally can be the most peaceful option. And that would be to avoid, a French Revolution type retaliation on either side. I mean, like, separation from the political parties is probably the best healing notion that we could put forward at this time.
Thoughts, feelings?
No, I agree completely with Cassandra. So the more that we kind of drift apart, and again, I blame a lot of this on the general government. The state governments, some of them are okay, some of them have their own problems. But the more that we try to force this, and this is something, so just so the audience knows, I'm actually a recently turned away anarcho-capitalist. So I was very far out there in terms of like where I thought we could take individual secession, so to speak. But the more that I've thought about it, especially in context with the last 18 months, the only time we've been a truly, even remotely close to culturally homogenous nation state was probably that 10-year, 15-year period after World War II. You saw a very radical break from that during Vietnam, not so much during the Korean War, but you saw a very radical break from that during Vietnam, and then it's only gotten worse from there. But we still, and Marcus, I made this point to you the other day, we still have, even with conservatives, they're trying to conserve FDR's America, but we do not have that culture anymore. I mean, we are not racially homogenous. We're not culturally homogenous. We're not politically homogenous. We are completely separate, and that was the main reason when we had that graphic up with the 47% and 66%. That's the big takeaway. There is like, look, we are not a nation state by any sense, by any true definition of that word. The United States does not exist. It does not exist at all.
Thoughts, feelings? I hear someone say that sucks. You know, everybody's allowed to have their opinion.
It's an unfortunate truth, realistically. Not much more to be said on it. I'm pretty sure. And when it reaches down to the depths of even social culture, to where people can't even have a talk or disagreements or opposing opinions on anything, you're just immediately discounted and cut off. Like, it's gotten to such a sickening level of who's right and who's wrong that, the only thing that we can do as humans is tackle it head on and try to figure out the best resolve, because how can you change millions of people's minds once they've already been set to a certain diameter?
Right. And I mean, Nicki Minaj, with everything that's going on with her, she said something. No, I mean, it's relevant.
She's blowing up, brother. I was at a freedom rally yesterday here in Fresno, and I talked to Jason about this. I was there to report the news. Yes, California interviewed Democrats and Republicans for the recall election. We interviewed anybody. We would go to protest. I did not take a stance supporting what they said. I just said, we don't trust the media and we want to get the information out. These are hardcore conservatives. And I'm like, what do you say about Nicki Minaj? And they're like,
yeah,
they probably never listened to her song in their life. And they are all about Nicki. Nicki Minaj is now the new hero of the right. I don't know if she planned on that, but they love her.
Right. Well, but she's made a lot of really good points, like specifically to what Cassandra was saying. She had a tweet just the other day. I cannot speak to, agree with, even look at someone from a particular political party. People are not human anymore. Yeah. Yes. And that it's only going to get worse because the powers that be, they thrive on chaos. Especially the general government, they thrive on chaos. You had conservative people I'm just going to use Oregon from last year as an example. You had certain conservative people in Oregon. They wanted Trump to send in the federal military to suppress some of the stuff that was happening out there. No, no, that is an Oregon problem. So Oregon needs to come up with a way to deal with that. But, same thing on the flip side. When you have conservative leaning states who get themselves into a pickle over whatever the issue is, they shouldn't be bailed out by the general government, either through the court system, from the federal military, whatever. They should not be bailed out of those decisions. That's how you actually kind of test theoretical policies in the real world and say, okay, did this objectively work or did it fail? And then with the cultural stuff, I mean, you even had there's a secessionist group in Georgia, and I don't know if you've talked to them, but there's actually a group of black people. They want to set up a black ethno state within Georgia and basically create. They're calling it a black haven, and their idea is they want to buy like hundreds of acres and again basically create their own little. I guess you'd call it autonomous zone. It wouldn't really be a state, but they want to create their own little autonomous zone and say, hey, for all black people in the state of Georgia who want to move in, please come on. And that we're going to have to get used to the fact that with any of these secession movements, there may be things that make us uncomfortable. Like if you start saying ethno states, people get very defensive about that. But we have to realize that may be a realistic outcome of this, is that some people will choose to separate themselves based on that plus political differences. And so we just need to understand that decentralization in whatever form it takes, it's going to happen regardless. Whether we do it peacefully through force of arms or from an imperial implosion, it's going to happen.
Yeah. And that's really how you judge how bad it is. That's decisive self-segregation.
Right. Right. And I wish them all the best. I mean, if they succeed in pulling that off, I mean, I don't think the state should take any sort of formal action against them, like sanctions or forbidding people to go there or anything like that. No, let them do whatever it is they want to do. If it succeeds on its own merits. If it fails on its own merits. But they have the right to try it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and so that leads us around to self-determination. And, it's like it or not kind of a thing, kind of like gun rights in California, right? Like it or not, most of California feels a certain way about something. Well, so like it or not, self-determination is a right that the United States of America agrees is a human right as signed on the United Nations Entrance Charter, which is a treaty which, under the United States rule of law, is the highest level of law, higher than even that of the federal government. The right to self-determination. So, United Nations Entrance Charter discusses self-determination, defines self-determination, and it also goes into a lot of the fine point do's and don'ts when a people are pursuing self-determination, right? There are appropriate means to pursue, and there are inappropriate means to pursue it. Like it or not, ethno-state or not, if a people are pursuing self-determination in a legal, peaceful manner, that's really, I think the most anyone can ask for, the best anyone can hope for, is that it's legal and peaceful, right?
Well, and the real problem comes in when you have government forcing that sort of stuff. Now, in this case, and I just put the link to the article I was talking about in the private chat here, but in this case, I'm sorry, I said hundreds of acres. Right now, they've actually purchased 97 acres, or at the time of that article, they had purchased 97 acres. But if people are doing this sort of stuff voluntarily and they don't have the force of government guns behind them, I mean, they're not going to be able to have or to be the cause of a mass casualty event. They're not going to per se be able to freeze people out of participation in society. It's only when you have the overarching concentration of power that is government where that stuff gets institutionalized. And I mean, you know, a lot of people think we're still dealing with that today, even though all this stuff ended 60 years ago. So there's a lot to be said here where it's like, as we move the window more in the separation direction, we have to understand when the states break off, undoubtedly, even in California, there's going to be certain counties who don't want to be associated with California anymore. And what do we do with those people? When Texas goes away, there's going to be Democrats who don't want to be involved with that state anymore. How do we make sure they're protected, or what happens to them? And so that's something any secessionist group needs to make sure we have a very firm understanding of that, and say, look, we're going to take steps to protect you, whether that's giving you the right to leave once we leave and you can go back and be part of the union if that's what you want, or if you want to break off and be your own little autonomous thing and be a microstate like Liechtenstein, okay, have at it. It's not our job to tell you you can or cannot do it.
Love Liechtenstein. Let's see here. I got a link. Okay, let's go right to this link from Mr. Jeffersonian. And hey, everybody, this is going to be an action item, I can tell. 19 families buy 97 acres of land in Georgia to create a city safe for Black people. Good for them. We want freedom, exclaims the real estate agent Ashley Scott. The land suits east of Macon in rural County, Georgia, a safe place. George Floyd. I'm trying to find a name. Land purchase from the Georgia Freedom Initiative in Wilkins County. All right. Let's see if we can find the Georgia Freedom Initiative. Georgia Freedom Initiative. Click here to donate. The Freedom Initiative was established out of an extreme sense of urgency to create a thriving, safe haven for Black families in midst of racial trauma, a global pandemic, and economic instabilities across the United States of America brought on by the pandemic. Calls are being made for police reform, where cries for justice and reparations ring out in the streets. Communities are working together to feed food, insecure families, provide masks, and direct payments to families in need. We want to do all our part. Our mission. Let's go to vision. Not really hearing it.
Right, and while you're looking at that, Marcus, that they're kind of following along what Malcolm X said, or at least early Malcolm X said, trying to build a parallel society strictly for themselves. And I mean, I fully support it. Now we may disagree on the politics behind it, but I believe they have every right to try this, and I don't think the state should interfere with them in their endeavor.
A thing a lot of people forget about Malcolm X and the Black Panthers is that food banks and food distribution is like now a thing, and it's like a all day, every day, anywhere you go, there are food banks throughout America now. We can directly thank Malcolm X and the Black Panthers for that.
Well, yeah, and if they can fully fundraise themselves for this, then, there's no reason to step in the way. They're not asking for anything from the government, albeit, help to start or reparations, whatever that may be. But yeah, as long as they're not, they're doing everything on their own and they're fundraising, and they shouldn't be infringed upon. I agree with Mr. Jeffersonian in the fact that, yeah, everybody has a right to try this. And as long as you're not trying to suckle off the teat off of anybody, then go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, and you never know where it might lead when you don't just stamp it out immediately just because it's something new and different.
Team, let's try to make contact with the Freedom Georgia Initiative, just like we were trying to reach out to Frexit, the French secession group. So this will be something we'll work on. Let's try to talk to them. Mr. Jeffersonian, if you make any contact with them, we would love to talk to them. We could also talk to them with you. I mean, I think the more platforms that we give to what we call normalize or make the conversation normative, or some of our people like Cassandra said, make it safe. The more normal, rational, reasonable, regular people are talking about it, it's not a really big thing. A lot of people around America are discussing this. The more reasonable we become. That elevates the platform for all of us. So the more we talk to each other, the more we seem rational, the more secessionists seems like rational people instead of carrying pitchforks and burning things down, the better all of our movements do. Because the biggest issue is we're all seen as nutbags. Right? When I talk to just to be blunt, when I talk to the Texas secessionists, it's just like, yeah, they just think we're crazy. And I met them. They're not. They understand the law and government and economics, and they still think it's a good idea. But if you don't get to talk to them, you just go with assumptions. And we have the same thing here. We're assumed to be, I can't tell you the number of times we go into meetings and we just start talking about politics, and people are like, wow, you actually know your stuff. And we're like, why did you think we didn't?
Right.
Yeah. And I believe we should also reach out to the Texit companies as well.
We're connected with Texit.
Yeah.
Great idea. We are, but that's a great idea, and we are.
Yeah, that's going to be a very fun conversation to have.
We're going to try to get them back on. They want to. So, Mr. Jeffersonian, you like the rabbi as much as I do. He's been a big influence in getting secession movements around. The rabbi's the dad of Elliot Axelman. We just call him the rabbi, or Rabbi Axelman. But he got the interview with Yes and the Texas group. He put you and us together. He's had New Hampshire meeting the Texas group. And I know Liberty Block, which is led by Elliot, but also the rabbi, is really trying to have this national council of secession movements together. And he's gone further than anyone. Am I getting this wrong?
No. I mean, at least in my experience with Rabbi Axelman, Daniel Miller actually put me in contact with him. And then by extension, Rabbi Axelman put me in contact with you. And he's doing tremendous work, doing absolutely phenomenal work in this space.
Okay. We're going to stop there because I want to wrap it up, around 12:30, 12:40, unless there's more comments. And I want to go to some new project ideas we're working on. Mr. Jeffersonian, please feel free to stick around.
Could I point out one quick thing, is that the whole Texas versus white thing, when people bring it up and say, the Supreme Court settled it and said no, really they didn't. What they said is unilateral basically, I decide that I secede here and now. That's not legal. But the only legal way for a state to leave the Union is through consent of the states. Well, it seems like Texas, California, Colorado, Alaska, potentially even Hawaii, Puerto Rico, if it ends up becoming a state, would probably give us a vote. These friendships that we're making might actually help secure us more votes if California ever presents a national divorce option to the United States. Just like to make that point.
Right. And I'm going to have to hop off soon, but I did just want to reiterate the point for anybody who wants to point to Texas White. That was a junk case, absolutely junk case. The case itself was about bonds. Salmon P. Chase figured out a way to wrangle secession into it. It was 4 years after the war ended. He was never going to judge an opposite way. If you really want to look at a more telling aspect of that, there's a book. I cannot remember who wrote it. Maybe Nicole Warren. I'm not sure if Warren's her last name. Anyway, it's called Secession on Trial. And Jefferson Davis, regardless of how you feel about the cause of the South, whether you think it was for slavery or whether you think it was for decentralization, Jefferson Davis was never tried for treason. No Confederate officer was ever tried for treason. The only Confederate person who was killed in the command structure was actually the leader of the horrible camp down there in Georgia. And oh my gosh, the name is escaping me right now. But I think that is the most powerful thing. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Marcus has it up there. So Jefferson Davis was never tried. He wanted his trial. That's important for people to know. He wanted his day in court, and he never got it. And there was a lot of fear that if he used what's called the compact theory of the Constitution, which in my opinion is the compact fact, states have every right. They are the true political units. It's not a mass of individuals, and it's not a conglomerate of people up in D.C. The states are the true political units in this union. And so it's very interesting that he never got his day in court. And again, Texas v. White is a garbage Supreme Court case. Again, the issue in that case was actually governmental bonds, not secession. Sam and P. Chase just figured out a way to kind of tie that in. But Marcus, I actually do need to jet. Thank you so much for your time and for having me on today.
Well, look forward to the interview. We're going to be doing an interview together. If you'd like to be involved in the interview between Yes California and the Colorado Secession Group, email me. We will be doing that shortly. And let's get this national council together, brother. We can make it happen.
Absolutely. And thank everyone again for y'all's time.
Real quick.
That was really good to meet him.
Yeah.
Yeah, fun, right?
Good things, good meetings happening in the future. Lots of people starting to open their minds and ideas towards, something different, which is, shouldn't be so scary. We've had a lot of different things going on this year, and at least this one's something positive to look forward to.
That's news is going our way right now. So a couple points. He can say whatever he wants about Texas versus White. And I've heard many lawyers in California also say that's a garbage case. And they're welcome to say that. It doesn't matter. So the Constitution says for legal disputes, there's only one group that gets to do that. That's the Supreme Court. The legal system of America is based upon case law, which means you can only make decisions based upon prior cases. So if there's only one case on secession, Texas versus White, that is the reference, period. Doesn't matter what anybody thinks. That's the only go-to. The fact that it came after, antecedent to the Civil War, means that it is the most relevant case, which means you have to refer to it. So you can hate that case, you can think it's stupid, but the entire legal structure of America for the last 2.5 centuries is you don't just get to make it up. You have to follow cases. There's only one case, and the Supreme Court gets to decide on these disputes. So that is the reference. Now, everybody can think that's stupid and dumb, but that's the way the whole thing's worked. So that is the reference. And they didn't say you can't secede. They said you cannot unilaterally secede, but you could go with consent to the states. And Salmon Chase was appointed by Lincoln. So I'm betting he had some idea about secession and was thinking about it since his entire term in office was during the Civil War. So maybe he was thinking about this idea. and maybe he was, trying to figure out something. So I understand people may not like that case, but this concept that you can just dismiss it is itself garbage. There's nothing in the way the government works that says you get to do that. Now, let's go to a new idea. We're going to update California's future. I want to show you 2 new action items. We're going to be doing an update to California's future. We came up with this book. This was the first book we did. You can see it was made by many people, some of whom aren't even in the movement anymore. Bart passed away. Theo Slater left. There's Sam Chaney still with us. Me and Lewis, Mike Ross left. Anyways, this was a huge book where what we tried to do was present a vision of what California could be. We hadn't had a lot of success, and so we tried to do a high-quality white paper creating a coherent vision for a future of California. We were able to get into the Los Angeles Times in a 3/4 page article discussing. However, the reporter kind of killed it because she goes, "Great book, very thorough. I didn't bother to read it because it's so long." So we impressed people, but they didn't read it. We're going to come up with a new vision for the future of California to get people excited about Calexit. That update is going on now. If you'd like to be involved, email me. I'll also send out a link of California's future. Right now, I'll post that in private chat. So if you want to be in.
Yeah. And Marcus, it might be a good idea to make a short video as well, since I don't mean to disparage anyone, but not a whole lot of people read anymore. So.
Done.
I know. Shocking.
Done.
Yeah. I was kind of going to suggest something along the same lines, a little more modernized format. A lot of people do. It doesn't really matter if you're reading a script or if you're reading the book. I mean, there are people who watch people read books, and they don't really watch so much as they listen, right? We could do audiobook version. I would also suggest we could have an abridged version. Like, this is the entire complete 100,000% breakdown. This is the abridged version. If you want to just see some numbers and read a quick sentence or two about how this correlates to what. And then we could get like a 200-page book down to like 60, right? Maybe a little more palatable for the consumer.
We are taking suggestions now. I asked Lewis to primarily direct this project, as we typically do. Someone takes lead on the project so that it gets done. So if you want to be involved, you're going to need to be working with Lewis. I would suggest everybody read the previous one, see how you'd like to update some information. We're also going to do another project. So we're looking at updating California's future. We're also going to be providing online certification in Secession. So we've taken all the information that we know, we broke it up into different PowerPoints, and we're going to try to provide online courses in Secession so that, because people love online learning, it's blowing up, it's getting really popular. People love saying, I'm certified in X, right? Really doesn't matter what. So we were going to go, well, you can get certified in Secession law, and you can take our course. By the way, it's the only one on earth. So there's not anybody who can say you're doing it right or doing it wrong or my course is better. There's no one doing this at all. And all of our stuff is perfect and well factually shown. Let me show you a couple examples. Okay, whoops, that wasn't it. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. All right, so this, I'll show you an example. This is something roughly what it'll look like. So, here's the intro slide. In this course, you'll learn about the United Nations Article 1, interpretation of the UN Article 1, Kosovo's a new nation, and modern secession movements. Very based upon research and modern news, and slowly walks you through what the law is. And then you end with a certificate that you print out. Now, the slide view. Sorry. There's a notes view on there it is. So you see the slide, but there's going to be someone reading this section. So you'll see this, but then this is going to be read. And so it'll be like really professional. We have a PowerPoint, but you load it into a machine that basically creates this online course software. There's a WordPress access, and then there's something else called POTUS or POTUSI or something. We're looking at both those. We can afford both. You'd see the slide. Somebody would read this, and then you'd go to the next slide. And then here's the slide, and then somebody reads this, just like training courses. And as you can see, all this is based upon real facts and knowledge. Let me see if I can find another example. Here's course 3, same thing. California was independent. Slide, then stuff, slide, then stuff. So it's mostly designed. It's mostly already all built out. But we just need to start having videos and somebody doing it. And somebody does the audio. We match it to the PowerPoint slides. You load it into the machine, and it seamlessly integrates and makes you this thing going. And then otherwise, then you just release the URL. So we're doing an update of the website. That's why it's down now. We're doing an update of California's future, and we're going to release the courses. And the idea is to have the courses come online in the new webpage, California's future come online in the new webpage, and the new webpage, and they all kind of mirror each other. So new look for Yes California that looks universal across 3 new things that we're releasing. So we did very well with the debates. We want to ramp that up with new products. We think a new vision and new courses makes us look very educated and like we're going places and doing things. The other big idea we're working on that someone suggested, and I think it's worth checking out, is the idea of an audit. That when we were interviewing a lot of the candidates, many of the Republicans and Trump supporters, but then many of the Democrats said there should be an audit of California just all the way down. That's never happened before. We can find that it's a reasonable idea because they keep doing little audits. And for recently, this week they found millions of dollars wasted during the pandemic for rental assistance. So people went homeless because they couldn't manage millions of dollars during this emergency. And we wouldn't know that at all unless there was this little audit. Here's another article, California Roundup. They do little audits. They found a bunch of money was wasted, $1.5 billion from California State University, Medi-Cal. I think there's a public health of $70.9 million. And so there's a lot of reasons to think of an audit. There's this group, Citizens Against Government Waste, that's constantly talking about these things. Here's the look at the actual California State Auditor. And the big idea would be, we already filed initiatives. We're really good at it. We filed 9. And we filed this one on Calexit. Maybe we could file an initiative that would force a master audit of all of California. And we could do that in a way where we bring in allies early. So instead of us just making the initiative and filing it on our own and trying to get attention, we could work with allies to say, hey, how about an audit of the California government? And then we could have allies work with us to file this initiative that has our name attached to it, and we get a lot of promotion. And this was our newest member, Cassandra Baldridge's idea. I think it's a good idea, and I'd like to discuss it. Cassandra, thoughts, feelings, and then we'll ask everybody else what they think. Open discussion. No negative energy, but critical comments.
I'm glad that the audit is finally gaining traction. I've been talking about it for pretty much the whole last 2 years. So at least finally somebody's starting to see that, hey, yeah, if we're going to be one of the powerhouse states and we've got so much money and blah, 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 surplus this and extra federal funding here and there, like, yeah, it definitely needs to be looked into. And the fact that the Democrats are picking up on it right now means that we've got a lot of steam to run with. And I mean, once you've got both sides looking into something, you can't really stop the steam-powered engine on that. So the more traction we gain, the more we talk about it, the easier it's going to be, because even if the federal government wants to block us in any kind of way, they can't stop all of us. And I mean, we the people kind of run California, so we're going to have to start taking a little bit initiative and moving forward a little faster with what needs to happen.
Well said.
Yeah, and I also wholeheartedly agree that it is long past the time where California should have had. I mean, when you look at California, it's a generator of culture and revenue, and that makes us pretty much a business. It's the company, the corporate entity is California. Now, if a company does not properly maintain its books and double check itself here and there become minor indiscrepancies that then over time turn into very large indiscrepancies. Then you get like the federal tax and revenue service coming for you, because lo and behold, there are some rather big discrepancies going on in your books. You say you only made $1 million, but we see you're worth 3.6 trillion. I think someone's trying to hide their money and not pay their taxes. Now, not saying I'm all for, pay the man, but California being a business, right? We need to maintain proper records and books, because eventually we can use that to, one, say, hey, we've been a donor state 9 years out of 10 for the last 4 decades running. More like 9.9 years or something out of 10. But we can also use it to see how much we are actually worth. I mean, California is one of the largest agricultural and economic entities in the world. And I believe that if we push for an audit that is a publicly available, publicly broadcast results kind of audit, it will show the majority of California that we really can go on our own and do all right, and that we'll actually be much better off, because here's how much we give to the federal government every year, right? So I think it can achieve many different great speaking points for us. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we want to see, Californians are fed up with how the money's being dispersed, how it's being hidden, how it's being covered up. What we want to see is some personal accountability. And I think that's kind of what you were boiling down to, Jason, on that, is find out where the money's going, how it's being spent, and if there are discrepancies that we do find, that accountability needs to be taken. Consequences need to be delivered, albeit whatever they are, depending on the seriousness of the discrepancy. But yeah, personal accountability is a lot of what California needs right now, especially with the last 2 years and with our current governor.
Yeah, and it's like, you want better roads, Petaluma, known for its potholes and horrific driving conditions on its roads, Petaluma. You want better roads? Well, guess what? You could have better roads. We just got to do this audit and see where the funding is going that you should have been getting for those roads. Napa, you need the payouts from that earthquake from some years ago, or the fires from this year, last year, year before, and the year before that. Guess what? If we do a proper state audit, we could probably find the funding. Oh, People of Paradise, or what used to be Paradise, back home in the mountains in the Sierras where I'm from. Yeah, you'd like to have a town to live in again? There is probably money for that, but we'll only find it through a state audit. We'll probably start with that $28 million that ended up going to Gavin Newsom's winery up in Napa for COVID relief funds. Just saying. But, you know, that's one of the little cake decorations on top of the whole thing, is we are going to find things like that, and proof of it has already been brought to light and drowned out. It's going to come back to light, is the thing.
And it's like, you can lie to the people all you want, but once an audit happens, the truth's going to be told. Numbers don't lie, and there's going to be receipts for everything.
That's true.
Yeah, and who, I mean, Democrat, Republican, Green, who wouldn't want an audit that is more than likely going to turn up a lot of missing funds that we desperately, direly need? Well, the only people who might hold that up are maybe people who expose. Exactly.
Yeah,
so if
Newsom
starts coming out anti-audit and trying to claim that it's going to waste bazillions of dollars, I think we can take a pretty safe assumption he just doesn't want us to focus too much on Plump Jack Group and his winery.
Well, yeah, and as well as that goes too, Jason, as far as what it costs the public for this kind of thing, just like people were complaining about, oh, the recall, it's going to cost too much money. He only has a year left. It only cost each Californian around $6.
Yeah, right. And I was more than happy. I mean,
take my money. Go ahead.
I pointed out to folks, like, Gray Davis was fairly popular until it came out that he was embezzling state funding. And immediately the recall thing went through. Now, why is it that when Gavin Newsom is caught red-handed with his hand in the COVID relief funds from the federal government, piggy bank, we're not able to successfully recall him? I mean, I'm all for holding a corrupt official accountable, no matter what party they're from. If a green governor got elected and then went and did these same things, you better believe your sweet bippy that I would vote yes on their recall.
Yeah, and even if we don't start with a federal audit or an audit of the entire state, there's nothing stopping us from starting small to the places where they really can't say no to us, like in schools and what's another good one? Maybe energy and maybe fire prevention would be good places to start if we're not going to tackle it head on, because as we stated earlier, yeah, there has been discrepancies already found in the schools. And so that might be an easy place to start to figure out where the funding's going and stuff, since it, you know, benefits our children and the rest of society in the first place.
Yeah, I think school medical infrastructure being like roadways, power, water treatment, water storage, right? All of that. I think those are really the kind of the biggest aspects of our modern California society. And yeah, given that they're the largest portions, it would make sense to deal with those first, because it's probably a bulk of the whole thing anyway.
Yeah. And I feel like we'd have a lot of support from Californians considering how many families we have. It's a very family-oriented state.
Yeah,
And with what's going on
doing
in the
schools
public
and
schools
hospitals.
over the last few months, parents are really paying attention.
Yeah, and doing education and medical definitely hits home on the family end, because if you're a family, you want your kid to, or if you're a parent, you want your kid to be healthy and to receive a good education, to be smart and successful in life.
Yeah.
And yeah,
We
it
need to
only
make
makes
sure
sense
that the
to
funding
start
is
there.
going towards that 100%. No scraping off the top. Where's everything going? How is it benefiting our schools? How is it benefiting our kids?
So with our petition, would we structure it this way of like, should this pass, the California state auditor must immediately begin on this process of, full statewide audit, starting with medical, educational, and infrastructure systems and related entities, or whatever.
Yeah. And wouldn't you agree, those are probably our top 3 most problem areas to begin with?
Yeah, I think with those 3 together, it encompasses probably 2/3 of California right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because infrastructure has everything from roadways to waterways and power supply, as well as the power transference, right? Those dreaded PG&E power lines.
Oh yes.
Okay, so let's look into this. The deal though with the audit and the initiative is we want to find partners before we file.
Mm-hmm.
So typically we file an initiative and then we go, hey, check us out. This would be, we're filing an initiative that's not exactly purely about Calexit, but it is about holding the California government to account. And we want to be seen as people who don't believe in fairy tales. Like, we're already seen as crazy, so we like to do very rational things like an audit of the government, which a lot of rational people who have money would like. That makes us look rational. If we can get some allies with us to help pay the filing fee and promote it, then we're looking good. I think it's something that a lot of conservatives would like, especially now, and especially given that we know for a fact Governor Newsom lied about the budget by the tune of, I think, $32 billion. That's from the Legislative Analyst Office, not Fox News. That's the official California government saying you lied by $30 billion. While liberals typically only bring up that the recall election was a waste of $297 million, almost all of them, from my research, have been completely ignorant of the fact that the governor wasted 30 times that amount. Additionally, we look at the fact that the prisoners received, $2.5 billion in money they weren't supposed to get. And additionally, we can look at the fact that rental assistance to people to keep them in a home was not given to them during a pandemic. So we can see you screwed up rental assistance, you screwed up getting prisoners a bunch of money, and you lied about the budget to the tune of $30 billion. Probably a good idea to check you out. Additionally, you add on the fact that Governor Brown slammed Newsom when he released his budget and says, this is not sustainable. You are not managing money well. That article was out for about 2 hours and then disappeared. He said that 3 months ago. Since then, we've learned that they did not manage the prison funds. This came out after Brown said, Newsom, you're screwing up on the budget. Then we found out he screwed up on the COVID money and the prison funds and the $30 budget surplus. Brown was the first one pointing this out, and you never heard anything about it. So Brown is not Donald Trump, okay? He's not a Trumpian. He's a fiscal conservative who loves California, and he said, wow, Newsom, you don't know how to manage money. And then we saw even more. So an audit, the time is ripe. Also,
and we might be able to reach out to some heavy hitters, like maybe businesses that left California due to these reasons. I'm sure they'd be 100% for an audit. And not only businesses,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of heavy hitters that are in like the, you know, A list of the front running, you know, conservative battle. I don't want to drop names, but there are plenty of people that we can reach out to. And for fear of YouTube knowing who they are, I'm not going to name drop.
Yeah, I would say Industrial Areas Foundation, which is huge through California, supporting impoverished, marginalized subcommunities, such as the Canal District in San Rafael. For those who aren't familiar, San Rafael is the hub city of Marin County, which is one of the wealthiest places in North America. Also, the home of the highest wealth disparity in North America. You know, you can find someone without 2 pennies to rub together sleeping in the doorway of, you know, the business of someone who owns like 15 homes. 15 homes that are all worth more than $1 million a piece, no less. But in San Rafael, they have a district called the Canal, and it's where most Latino people are told to go to rent an apartment or whatever. The place is not well cared for by the city. Places where multi-million-dollar homes are located are very, very well kept by the city. They've even gone out of their way to employ homeless people with this street cleaning program where no longer are they paying city employees a decent living wage. They're paying homeless people $15 a day gift cards for doing that same service and keeping certain neighborhoods super tidy because that's where the super rich live. Meanwhile, people are being subjugated and pretty blatantly segregated out. In Marin County, I forget what brought me up on this whole thing. I just felt that I needed to explain this to folks so that they know where this is coming from. But yeah, the Industrial Area Foundation. They're pretty much the foundation of anyone who's in a community that's been subjugated like that, segregated out like that. Places like Hunters Point here in San Francisco come to mind as well.
So you mean like active created slums? So
yes,
to speak.
yes, exactly. It's akin to back in the late 1930s, early 1940s in Germany. They were segregating people out into what they called the ghettos that were just, you know, hey, no one wants to live here. We'll take these people we don't like, force them to live here and just stay here, and we'll just keep them there.
Presenting
We'll figure out what to do with them later. Yeah, it's akin to all of that.
Yeah.
Which is why the United States should never, ever, ever have anything like that going on anywhere within its confines, ever, for one moment. But it's been going on for a long time, and, you know.
Yeah, and they've been trying to industrialize living like that for I don't know, since America existed and stuff. I don't necessarily agree with it. Like, don't create, you know, call something shimmering gold when it's really, you know, nothing at all, fool's gold, essentially. Like, yeah, we'll give you a place to live, we'll pay you livable wages, but it's going to be the bare minimum, and we're not going to give you much more than crumbs. So, and yeah, people want to work harder for that, and there are going to be a lot of issues with that too, with as many immigrants as we have flowing in. So we always run the risk of creating our own slums, making the homeless problem worse. I definitely need an audit to figure out where some of these things are going, who's getting paid for what, and what can we do to make our Californians and American citizens, you know, happy and trustworthy again, because they're not necessarily hanging on the whim of every word anymore. People are starting to open their eyes and see, hey, there might be some things missing here. There might be something going on over here, and let's go ahead and check this out. And that's the kind of energy I like to see. And you know, what we're talking about, pushing and rolling these things forward, is very viable, and probably sooner than we think. So I think we'll all be surprised once we start pushing this ball, how fast it's going to gain momentum.
Yeah, and I think that that's why the IAF may potentially be able to get behind supporting an audit, a full and complete audit that would be made public. I also wonder if maybe the Bay Area Council, on the other end of things, headed by Jim Wunderman, who is a fantastic human being, very, very knowledgeable about anything, economic policies, economic do's and don'ts, the current economic scene. He is on the other end of the socio-political spectrum from what I was just talking about. But that's why it also stands out to me that maybe this could be beneficial if we can manage to convince both the Industrial Areas Foundation and the Bay Area Council to both support a full and complete publicly announced statewide audit.
100% agree.
Marcus, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's approved. We're going to work on it. The key thing is we need to bring allies in. So if we can get some allies in, if we get allies in and friends who say, yeah, we love this, yeah, we'll work with you, yeah, we'll help fund it, etc., then we totally do it. That's basically it. Is we don't want to go back into initiative where it's all us. This was an idea from Cassandra that allowed us to have Yes California show that we're not head in the clouds secessionists, that we actually understand the government has to be held to account, and that any sort of California independence is going to have to improve better services provided, better operations. And how do you show that you're actually serious about that? You do things that somebody who's in that mindset would do, which would be a serious audit. Nobody's proposing it. The Democratic Party will never do it, neither will the Greens, and the Republicans don't have enough power to suggest it. But we do. We have a big enough bandwidth to propose this, and if we said we were working with some allies, while it's not directly about secession, it does boost our brand as saying, look, we are level-headed secessionists. That's the image we need. Let's get some allies. If we can do it, let's do it.
Yeah, and I'd like to start by maybe putting together a list too of the mass exodus of businesses, heavy hitting businesses that have left California due to the we'll just call it monetary issues of the state itself. So I'll be putting together.
The Bay Area Council has
like to reach out to them maybe one by one.
Good idea.
Because I'm sure they've got plenty of beef with California on that aspect, at least since they willingly just vanished their business out of our state. So, that's a good place to start. That's a very soft, agreeable measure to kind of poke at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know personally, Elon was going to leave. He was going to take his business out of California years ago, before SpaceX ever landed their first stage of their rocket. before that point, Elon was already, the taxes are way too insane here. I'm not able to maximize the profits in the way that I need in order to continually pursue this whole space exploration mission. So since that's my main love and the thing I really care about most, I'm probably going to have to leave California if it doesn't get better with all of this crazy tax stuff. And I saw it then. I agreed then, even though I don't own a business. Part of why I don't own a business is because the tax stuff is too insane. I cannot afford it. I would have to own my business. It would be insanely successful, and I would still have to work 4 jobs just to maintain my business and survive here and be able to live here.
Yeah. And with Elon, too, you saw his interviews. It was absolutely heartbreaking. The poor guy was in tears, being like, well, it was my dream to work with a space program, but I literally cannot do it here.
Yeah.
And somebody like that could make a lot of improvements. Just saying.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and, thanks to Elon, California has a spaceport. We're one of the few places in the world with a spaceport. I love Elon for that. I love being able to say California's spaceport. It's a pretty awesome thing. And I would love to, I think it's also worth noting, the whole good business thing. You want to make that tax money off of a multi-bazillion-dollar company. Well, it would mean that you have to accept a reasonable tax and not push it. Because if you push it, that chicken's going over to another coop, and now you've got 0 eggs coming in.
Yeah, which is kind of basically what happened, because as soon as Elon moved his company out of California, what happened with Amazon? They started doing their own kind of space exploration initiative. So, with we lose one thing, gain another thing, and I don't know. I don't necessarily know if that's running out of California or not, but yeah.
Well, let's.
The Bay Area Council has actually, even before it was really popular to admit and talk about businesses leaving, and they are the big businesses of the California Bay Area. So, when I go in and watch meetings with them, like the Clorox CEO, the head of Amtrak, you name it, the lieutenant governor herself was on there at one point. They are nothing but the biggest names of business in California. Yeah, Eleni Kounalakis, who, even with her recent stuff with Newsom, I still hold her in fairly fond regard. No one's perfect, right? We just strive for it. But I'm really thinking that the Bay Area Council, if they would be willing to support this idea, which isn't, it does somewhat fuel our speech for secession, because ultimately it will show all of California what we are financially as an entity and what we could be. But that's not even the reason we're doing it. The reason we're doing it is just because we want California to do better and stop hemorrhaging. And I think that if we stick with that stance on it and we come from that angle, we could get Bay Area Council to maybe even take this whole thing, spearhead it, and run it. Because in our hands, it could get some traction. In their hands, right, it came from our brains. But if we put our brains into their hands and let them run with it, they might actually be able to achieve this rather quickly.
As long as the name is attached. I'm not willing to develop something handed off to someone and they don't mention our name at all. That's a non-starter.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well,
yeah.
partners only.
yeah. Just
I'm
at
just saying, like, letting the Bay Area Council be the majority of where that push comes from.
And how do you guys feel about reaching out to maybe CAL FIRE as well?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure most people in CAL FIRE would probably support that.
Yeah, they're kind of at the end of their ropes with everything that's going on, and have a very good understanding and background knowledge of, you know, what's going on with our money and what's the direct, I could say, result of it. You know, not placing your taxes in the right places, not paying money to the right things, and then half of our state burns down. So
a state agency that was directly ruined by mismanagement. I get what you're getting at. That's clever. That's clever.
Yeah, and what about Caltrans? I think Caltrans they've been the subject of audits before, just singularly, because back in, like, I think the 90s it was, there was some misappropriation stuff, and I mean, it's been a while, right? And not saying they need a die-hard audit and we think they need to be audited because we think they're doing something. Just an audit may actually be beneficial for them and help them realize where the funding is, where it isn't, where it needs to be, and how to get it there.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the easiest outreach that we can do that will essentially have no pushback, because, you know, Caltrans has been through the audit before. There may be a little hesitancy for that. There's no reason why we can't reach out to them. But I mean, I think with the exodus of businesses, the schools, the infrastructure, and CAL FIRE, we could definitely get a lot of steam rolling on this engine.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a personal opinion, but, like, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
No, let's do it. Let's do it. It's done. Let's officially look into building allies. Anyone who would work with us on a new initiative on a statewide audit, the first of its own. So it's done. Let's start seeing if we can get the allies. I do want to close it up in a few minutes. I'll need to cover two more things. We had some incredible success this week. Let me show you all. So this is Elliot Axelman of Liberty Block. Liberty Block was the group that pursued the secession thing that got in the news recently. And he just said, my friend, the House Majority Leader of New Hampshire, just texted me. He will support this bill. And they're talking about Cody Bellinger. And the bill that they want to support is this one. Let me show you Cody first so you can see he's an actual human being. This is Cody Bellinger, Republican Party, New Hampshire House of Representatives. So he's an actual politician. He's actually in New Hampshire. New Hampshire actually had a politician file for secession in New Hampshire. And Liberty Block is saying they got this guy in the New Hampshire thing to back up something we've been suggesting in Calexit for a very long time. Let me show you briefly what that is. The idea was that we wanted conservatives to say they would vote us out. And it looks like we're going to get it for the first time ever. So this is a proposed resolution in New Hampshire by Cody Bellinger, encouraging the California government to secede from the Union and not take up arms against the United States. We had always been saying that Calexit would happen if Californians knew the votes were there. That when we got big before, part of the reason they plateaued the growth of Calexit was they said, Trump will pass, don't worry, we'll have this resistance and shut them down. The other thing they said was, you'll never be able to go. You could never get half the states or a majority to ever back you because they love you and they view you as fellow Americans. And maybe they say some things, but they'd never let you go because we're all Americans and they would love you and never let you happen. Now, at Yes California, we constantly talk to conservatives at least in 30 states, and they've all said that is a joke and not true. People would love to see you go. And so what we've been telling conservatives that we've been working with across America is the media's rigged out here. We're one of the few progressive organizations that understands that because it happened to us. Not saying we're more enlightened. It happened to us. We saw it. We used to buy the narrative, but when you happen to it, you realize there's fake news. So the media will not let Californians know that at least 35 states do not like them and would easily vote them out, which means we could legally secede tomorrow. The votes are there. If you don't want to back Calexit, that's fine. But it is misinformation to say that there's no legal possibility for us to leave because you can never get across the threshold numbers. That's not true. And so one of the great things that happened recently was Cody Bellinger is going to propose this resolution encouraging California to secede. And given how much talk we're looking at with national divorce, this is the first time since we've been around since 2014 that we've gotten a politician in another state to propose legally California seceding. We said that's all you need to do is prove to Californians by having conservative Americans back this. And that would shut down the newspapers here. The California papers could not mislead Californians and say, oh, you'll never get the votes. Not when conservatives in America are doing it, right? They can't act like you'll never get the votes. And yet here's these legislators and politicians in 35 states proposing it like you're done. Truth's going to get out. We need that truth out. If people do not want to back this, that's fine, but they're not backing it because of misinformation. Namely, you could never make it happen. It's a pipe dream. As we pointed out, it is legal. Texas versus White does allow it. You can do this. You can get that. We're constantly battling against that. If this breaks and we get politicians saying we're okay with California seceding, we win another major platform. Calexit is back like never before. So this is gigantically, stupidly, ridiculously big that it's the first and the potential that it holds. Not much there. Just wanted everybody to know. Here's the last homework assignment for everybody, if you will. So if you go to the Yes California YouTube page, 707 subscribers.
707.
707, getting up there. Used to be 640. We're growing, and that's with being throttled, right? Like they're not sharing our stuff. We have to.
But it's funny because it's a California area code too. So.
What is 707?
Bay Area.
Sonoma.
Sonoma.
Yeah, at one point it was 415 subscribers, which is the San Francisco North Bay.
Okay. If you take a look at this, here's Daniel Watts, not connected to us. Here's Daniel Mercury, not connected to us. Chauncey Killens, not connected to us. Heather Collins, not connected to us. Holly Beatty, Diego Martinez, David Hilberg, John Drake, and James Hannick. So that's 10 people who are not in Yes California, don't necessarily belong to our movement, and we got them all to discuss secession. We've never had so many people who are not associated with our movement discussing secession. The whole point of this movement is to get this conversation had and people having it all the time. Massive success recently. I've already pointed this out. But here's the other thing. We just got focus groups. So we are a more professional marketing-based organization. We have data. Please watch these interviews. This is a long-term thing. And the Calexit portion is only the last third. It's like the last few minutes. You don't have to watch the whole thing. Just watch the part. And it always comes second. It's always like the last bit around here is where we ask about Calexit. See what they say. Because we want to reframe our message for the political party, the website, the book, the courses around this. We think if we can reframe what we say in a manner that 9 different people who are not associated with us like, then maybe that's what, as Cassandra and others have pointed out, the safe way to do it. Here are the 2 of the conclusions that I noticed. Call me out, check me, question my answers. I don't think you got it wrong. We need to be calling each other out. This is the hardcore debate. Don't just accept, call out, call out, call out. Take a look at those interviews at Yes EA. I thought they were saying this. I'm not for secession. Oh no. But I love the idea of autonomy from America for food, fuel, power, electricity, basically not relying on America for anything at all. But I don't like secession.
Huh.
I just said I don't want any of their stuff. Tell me if I'm getting this wrong. Watch the videos. See, this is open for debate. I could be wrong. And I love it when y'all call me out and you say, oh, dude, you missed this. Great. Love it. Call me out. Let's do it. This is my conclusions. I could be wrong. Double test. But what I think I heard him was, I don't like the word secession. It triggers me. But if you said autonomy and complete independence from America for food, fuel, education, everything it needs to make a society survive, like as if we were a separate nation, I'm totally cool with that. 4 of them said that. 4. I didn't make them say that. I didn't know what they were going to say. That's why I'm like saying, please look at this data and let's figure out what exactly they're saying. This is my initial conclusion. Challenge it. Come up with your own. Let's figure out what the nexus of this is. The other thing they said right after, I don't like the word secession, but I like being completely independent, was, yeah, we should also just ignore any federal laws we don't like. And so if there's a law passed in America and all 50 states do it, but we don't want it, who cares? That's for the other states. We don't need that law, and we can pick and choose what laws we like. That's what South Carolina said. Okay, right before the Civil War, it's called nullification. Now, they don't see it as that. South Carolina, that's racist. Okay, but the legal mechanisms are identical. You just said ignore federal law, and they said threaten the federal government to back down anytime we don't like it by withholding federal money. That's also a crime. So, and that's what South Carolina suggested too. So we're not going to be part of the union. We don't follow your laws. We don't pay taxes. That's secession. So please tell me if I'm wrong, but half of them said complete autonomy and the other half said, yeah, ignore whatever laws we don't like and withhold federal tax money as we choose. That's collectively damn near identical, but they were horrified by the word secession. Okay, so if we call it ponytails, but it has these same things, are you cool with it? That's what I'm getting to, is there might be some word, fluffy puppies, perhaps, emotionally needy kitties. There's a phrase.
Time out time.
Yeah. There's going to be some phrase that they go, oh, that's warm and friendly, and I love that phrase. But packaged in that is ignore federal law. Don't pay federal taxes. Be independent from the federal electrical grid, financial grid, food grid, telecommunications grid, internet grid, climate change grid. Folks, that's
yeah. Well, and it's no longer just like us in Texas. More states are starting to talk about this and toss the idea around, whether they're calling it secession or not. It all kind of boils down to the same point. And so the more people are talking about it, it's really starting to become kind of a widespread wildfire, not to make a joke, but.
Please go with your own conclusions, own thing. This is my initial thing. Come up with your own thing. I think this is what they're saying. We have focus group data. We have hard data. We can remake our marketing package based upon hard data from 9 different people who had nothing with us. And they're from all over California, and they're liberal and Republican and Trump supporters and hate Trump. I mean, an incredibly diverse array of people. If we can boil down what they're all saying.
Yeah, and so that's why I keep coming back to the self-determination thing, is because, one, it is the actual legally appropriate, proper term as laid out by the United Nations and agreed to by the United States, no less. Under the U.S. rule of law, it is of higher authority and takes precedent over that of the federal government, as agreed to by the United States. So, it's basically, it's something that we have, that the U.S., our conquering overlord who annexed California, they agree on the word self-determination, on what it means, on what it is, what it isn't. They agree also that this is the highest level of law where they're concerned. So it also, what is self-determination? It's autonomy, it's freedom. There are many different words for it, but ultimately we just say self-determination because it's the legal term. It's like, binomial nomenclature, the scientific,
Well, it's exactly what the mainstream media does too, is like they create their own word for something, either villainize it or glorify it, and then people run with their decision on it. The definition doesn't change. You call it what you will, but the ideas are still there. And if people agree on it, then we can fight fire with fire. Call it something different. We don't have to call it secession. If people are more comfortable with nullification, it's still the same definition. If people are more comfortable with self-determination or independence or California Republic, it's all still the same definition. Whatever you're more comfortable with is fine. They can change the language all they want, and we'll use it to suit our best.
It's the quest for what is safe. I don't know what that answer is, but there is an answer. There is a right answer of you call it this, and everybody loves that term, or the most number of people do. So that's why I use really silly concepts like puppy tails, because I don't know what that is, but I'm trying to get the idea in everybody. There's a phrase, a way of describing this that everybody goes, oh, how could any of that be wrong and bad? It must be perfect. What is that? Where do we find that? Our quest is to find that term and find the way to describe this in less than 2 sentences that the maximum number of people, respondents hearing it, respond well to. I don't know the answer.
Well, I think ultimately the answer to that is self-determination. The Armenian folks.
Maybe we'll get our answer with the more people that we talk to, whoever we decide to partner with. Like, we might not have a full answer yet, but we've got a lot of good ideas to run with.
Yeah, I would point out that nations and peoples around the world, when they go through this same existential crisis, they land on self-determination. And when they say those words publicly, all of a sudden this worldwide organization of nations called the United Nations, their ears perk up, their eyes open up and look over in that direction and start focusing. Whereas if the movement is successful but has never said, quote, self-determination, then the UN doesn't really take much notice.
Fair enough. We've got to get traction. And so I hear you, and you're right. When I go around saying self-determination, some people are picking up on it, but I'm not sensing enough excitement. So maybe it is the right answer. Maybe that is the best we can do. Okay. I'd like to see if we can find something that really excites the hell out of people. And just my personal thinking, self-determination, they're like, yeah, that's cool. I want something where they're like, yeah. And when we get traction and we have a lot of people talking about it, then we can steer it into, hey, folks, now that 2/3 of us are into this, we need to use this particular term to go to the next level. We got to get that high. I'm not saying it's not.
You can say freedom. You can say freedom. I've run into the issue that in California, when you start talking about freedom, folks are usually like, freedom from the United States, the free land, the freest free in all of the free world. Oh, please. Right? And they just won't hear anymore after that. They think you're ridiculous for suggesting that America is not free. When you say self-determination, it's hot enough, yet not too hot. It's cool enough, but not so cold it's going to cause freezer burn. It is just the right amount, and it is also the current world standard accepted term. That's
I hear
why
you.
I use it.
I hear you. I think we need more marketing data.
Mhm.
So I'd like us to test the market, and I'd like more. Maybe there's more one.
Whatever accentuates the idea of power back to the people, I think is going to be the strongest thing to run with.
Maybe we should do a Twitter poll. Have multiple options, right?
There you go.
And
That's a
not
good idea.
throw too much into the pretext. Just
Mhm.
secession, independence, liberation, self-determination, and let people choose which one of those, right?
This is where we need to
What's
be.
more palatable.
Yeah. Hey, folks, I don't know the right answer, but I know right now, Jason and Cassandra, what you're doing is what we fucking. It's
Whoa
what
there,
we
bud.
should be. I'm sorry, and I try to keep it professional. It's what we
It's hard to be
should be doing, is what I meant to say. It's what we should funning be doing, is what I was trying to say. If anybody's asking, this kind of conversation. So what the two of you are debating, like, here's how we do this, here's how we find it. That's where we need to be.
Yeah. And right now we don't have a right or wrong answer. We just have a bunch of really good ideas. And yeah, I'm all about taking a poll on it. I'm all about, seeing what the public has an eye. I'm very curious in our upcoming video conferences that we're going to be doing. I don't know yet what we're going to title them as, but I'm excited for everything coming up in the future, hearing people's opinions. I can't wait to get ideas coming from every direction. With the more people we talk about every day, it's gaining steam. So, we've just got a lot of positivity to look forward to. And the more like good vibes and good discussions that we're having is just going to lead to ultimately what we need to do to begin with. And we're already taking the steps in the right direction. So, I mean, I don't even think what we end up calling it's going to matter. Once we all kind of agree on something, it's just going to flow off the tongue all easy. We'll know what it is when it hits us. Because it's probably going to hit us like a brick wall.
That's why I don't even try. Like, I learned from Jason. I learned from you. I learned from Mike. I learned from Robert. I've learned from Lewis. Listen to others. See what they're saying. That's why I use outlandish terms, because I'm not even trying to put an idea out there. I'm just like, something that's...
Mm-hmm. And I like self-determination as much as I like secession. We just got to find a line in between that's palatable to everybody.
I love self-determination. Jason,
Yeah.
I love Marcus, I love self-determination. I'm just, maybe my idea, what I like isn't necessarily what the public likes. I don't know. I really like anime more than most people should, but whatever. Okay. Last minute comments, and then we're going to wrap it up.
It all. It's more than most people should.
We're not
doing Princess Mononoke and Sword of the Stranger are a must-watch for everyone.
That's for 7 p.m.
That's for Tuesdays at 7 p.m. We're going to have a lot more casual. So this is our formal, and we're just going to turn Tuesdays into, we talk about whatever, go into detail, but it's a lot more informal and fun. So super eggheady, super dork time, 5,000, super nerd out on policy. But if you want to wear a tank top and smoke a little herb and drink and smoke cigarettes, it's fine, because it's the brainstorming hour.
Californication.
And Californian and California. These were terms we're looking at. So that's open for whatever you want to call it. It's open to,
you just spitballed some silly names.
Yeah.
Feel free to add your input.
Yeah. So no, we're still looking at the terms, but it's highbrow talk. But we got to watch what we say here. We're always trying to package the information here. We're trying to look at a certain branding here for Yes California. You get a good one?
I think. Right now, all we have is our YouTube channel, correct? The website, the YouTube channel.
And Facebook.
Yeah. What are your feelings on maybe opening a Rumble channel?
Thank you.
Because, I mean, a lot of the people that can't share political news or have political discussions without being, red flagged or demonetized. Not to say that we're making any money monetarily on this channel regardless, but the point of free speech I kind of want to bring up because there's several different platforms. We've got Rumble, we've got DLive, there's Odyssey. So there's nothing really stopping us from broadcasting on every single platform.
And I have an Odyssey account now. So Marcus, at some point we could hook that up. I know I don't let my YouTube channel that I use for my gaming, I don't have any politics on it. But I would be willing. The Odyssey thing is brand spanking new account. I literally have no content up there. Would totally be willing to use it for nothing but politics and I
just made a Rumble account as well. So you've got your Odyssey account. I have a Rumble account that I have yet to touch or post or even name. So there's options of all kinds out there, and it might be a little bit easier to spread it out amongst us. So every time we are live streaming, it's not all down onto you, Marcus, to have the stream up, or on Fuji or whoever's in charge of running the stream. We don't want to overwhelm you with that. So if Jason and I can take off a little bit of the weight and also double or triple the viewership of where we might be seen, then, there's no really downside to that.
Done. We'll start on YouTube, but we are going to branch onto Rumble and Odyssey, and I will just do the show and post it to as many places as possible.
Yeah, and there's also BitChute and DLive. They're a little bit smaller, but they've been around for a while, and they haven't been heavily censoring people as far as opinions on politics go. At least so much have I seen on YouTube is kind of risque, but those other platforms, they're there, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be using them.
There's absolutely no reason. Okay, done. Unless somebody objects, we're going to move to more fun format, super nerd time.
Yeah, I don't object. I'm just thinking, what was the name of that thing that, it's the hub that allows you to connect all of your different stream and platform things into one?
Maybe Streamlabs?
Hootsuite.
Hootsuite. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. You might want to put that in the chat.
2 was pretty good, but I remember Marcus had me look into the 2 of them at one point, and we had settled on one, and it was Hootsuite.
Yeah, I haven't looked at anything beyond Streamlabs OBS, so yeah, that's I'd love to talk more with Marcus and Jason about this, considering I'm not 100% familiar with the streaming, but also it's pretty much self-teaching regardless. You open it up, check it out. It's not that big of a deal.
Done. We're definitely
and it could help maximize our reach as an org.
Yeah. And I remember Fuji also saying something about maybe creating a new Twitter page, maybe a business Twitter page that we all kind of contribute and run on. I'm not very familiar with Twitter. I don't even have an account. I'm willing to work with somebody on that. If you guys do want to get kind of like a Calexit Twitter page going, or a Yes California Twitter page going, depending on what we want to call it, I'm definitely going to need some help on it. But there's no reason why we can't, flood every single social media platform with our ideas, because more eyes, more ears, more people willing to join.
We have a pretty good Twitter and Facebook and website and mass email. We have totally failed on other social media platforms. So no Odyssey, no Rumble, no Instagram.
I'm listening.
No really reaching out. Yeah, no really reaching out to the youth. So Tuesdays is going to be our fun time, trying to reach out to the youth, but still doing our work meetings. We'll try to broadcast those, and we'll try to get them on multiple platforms. And I love the idea of other people than me having the things so they're like, hey, I'll just do it. I'll run the stream, just show up. That's perfect. We're also going to reach out.
We don't want to overwork you, of course, and you're already doing so much with this stream.
Thank you. But you all work hard. You know how I think of all of you. Tuesday, we'll meet. We'll go over some stuff. let's look for allies for the audit. Let's take a look at those videos and see what focus group stuff we can make up. So look for allies, watch, focus.
Yeah,
group.
do you maybe want to have, I don't know if a spreadsheet's a good idea, or just have an email kind of going back and forth on the people that we're going to be contacting, just to kind of keep everybody in a loop without having to do too many back and forths.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll do that. I'm on it. I'll have that out today. Great idea.
Yeah. And I know I'm involved. Jason, would you like to be part of the email chain for that?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, perfect.
My dog. Okay, here's your homework. Watch the focus group videos. Whatever you think is what the right answer is. Let's reach out to allies for an audit, and let's talk the Black Secession people in Georgia. Love that spirit of them and the Frexit. So let's focus on studying our message from the focus groups. Let's see if we can file this initiative by working with allies, and if we can, we'll do it. And let's see if we can make contact with even more secession groups and give them a platform like we do to everybody. You can be right, left, whatever, as long as you are committed to legal secession and you're not talking about violence. We'd like to talk to you. Now, if you are talking about violence or non-legal, we don't have nothing to do with you. And yes, California is completely intolerant of that. But as long as you're not doing that, we want to speak with you. And any other comments? I'm going to do wrapping up comments. Any other comments from anybody before we shut it down?
I just like to say this is a
Heritage
very
Month.
progressive meeting for us.
I'm going to do Latin Heritage, Jason. And yeah, Cassandra, we're always trying to do better. And that's why I really liked you coming on, because right away you were doing what Fuji did. And I'm really pleased with a lot of the new people that's coming on. I'm working on getting Quinn Reynolds to join. And all of you acted the same way. Oh, is that what you're doing? Yeah, that's cool, but I noticed this doesn't work. And did you think about doing this? And maybe switch this over here. And what about this, moving that over here and then switching it over and then doing on that and baking it for 20 minutes and then selling it?
It gets more constructive every time.
If we, and I had this argument with Lewis, and Lewis taught me everything I know about marketing, and Lewis gets us in the news, and I love Lewis, and he's my brother, and I will protect his family to the end of the world. He's my brother. But sometimes he's wrong. And while he's brilliant at marketing, because Fuji was talking about let's have Puerto Rico as a territory as a way of selling it, and Lewis was like, yeah, we already tried that. And that was the point.
Have you touched back with him also? Sorry to interrupt, but have you touched back with him on the religious bridge conversation? He attended in LA this past weekend. I believe it was today. Was it not today?
No.
He went to the religious bridge where it was Christians, Muslims. We'll have to reach back on him on the church outreach, because I know he went to something, and he might have some good video footage, just like you when you went to your freedom rally. So maybe if we touch base on something with that, figure out what Fuji got and how his weekend went, because I know he was at an event.
I will reach out to him. Thank you for reminding me. Jason, thank you for reminding me of the meeting last night. And thank you both for being willing to take on things. It is a movement. Thank you for calling me out. I do forget things. I do make mistakes.
Oh, you're fine.
We do better as we call each other out. I do want to show you all something to back up. We are getting more professional. Was just, we did this women's rally on homelessness, and it was great. John Drake was there. We had many women. You may recognize some of them. And we're bringing them in. Veronica's come to our meeting. Cassandra's joined, working with Quinn. She's hanging out with us. Many other people. Collins might ask for us to endorse her campaign going into. But we also did this rally. This is the Rally for Freedom. And this is what I love. It's like, okay, suit and tie. All right, suit and tie, super professional, suit and tie. Okay. Tank top. I made a clean shave and stuff, but I'm just talking, and they loved it. We had a great conversation. These people were having so much good time. No one else went out to film them. No one else cared. And I get that these are conservatives, but I also get that these are liberals. Liberals, conservative. conservative, liberals, liberals, conservative, conservative, liberals. And here's the message. No one's talking to these people at all. No one gives a shit about them.
No, true. And you can hear it when we spoke with them too. Veronica and Quinn have not had a platform. They haven't had the opportunity to share their story, and they get really excited and really passionate about it. And I love to see that. And, you know, they're good people to invite on our team, and we've got spaces for everybody here. There's no one that we're willing to turn away, and there's no idea that's, I mean, we're going with a pretty, what most people would call a reckless idea, even though it's been around forever. So, but, you know, the world's kind of crazy right now. So everyone's looking for some kind of love, some kind of solution, at least somebody to hear and listen. And, you know, if that's the kind of platform we're providing, that's the kind of thing I want to run with.
Yeah, and to further all of that, what both of you have just said is that a great example is Veronica Fimbres and Larry Elder. They both had the exact same problem that was preventing them from getting onto the ballot for the recount. However, one of them was given an exception. Partly, I think, in my political strategic analysis, I have come to the conclusion that Veronica, being a reasonable, progressive choice, would have been bad for Newsom. Whereas Larry Elder, being on the ballot, reinforces the, oh, this is just insanity, it's a farce, it's not a democratic thing at all, right? And Veronica's green, but I mean, sometimes Dem and Greens work together. We're not enemies like the red and the blue. We're never at each other's throats, right? Why would they undermine a viable trans, black, progressive candidate? Why? Oh, that's right, because she would have been viable, therefore bad for the current establishment. And no one talks to her or to any of the other viable progressive, right? They lift up Larry Elder and put him in the spotlight. I heard Newsom talk more about Larry Elder than I heard Larry Elder talk about Larry Elder.
Well, and the mainstream
Newsom
media
couldn't be
with all their
bothered
hate
to mention the name of someone who actually served at his pleasure, someone who actually worked for him. And he can't be bothered to meet, can't be bothered to mention her name or her candidacy or her campaign, none of it. And it just speaks very directly to, yeah, you know, they don't talk to the people that are not already themselves. They will only talk to themselves because really the only thing that holds their interest is the reflection in the mirror.
Well, yeah, and I believe, honestly, Larry kind of missed a huge mark in supporting his running candidates because it realistically became, if anybody's only watching the mainstream media, a fight between Newsom and Elder. And it was nothing else other than that. Both candidates had an opportunity to maybe support one or two candidates that were good runners, you know, like, I don't know. I feel like the mark was missed a little bit on that. They could have talked about people. They could have endorsed people, drawn a little more attention rather than just kind of making it like we're going to throw paint and hate at each other the whole way through.
Oh, yeah,
and
totally.
It
Larry Elder helps to undermine.
Do you agree that it distracted from the points, though? It distracted from the points. It was all just kind of like back and forth, back and forth. You know, white supremacist this, bad taxes that, you know, whatever the argument may have been, it distracted from what the point of the vote was for.
Yeah, and I agree. I think had Larry Elder come and attended our debate that we were hosting since March 1st, since long before he ever joined in on the recall, since before he ever supported the recall, we were doing this. And all he had to do was accept an invitation where he wouldn't have to pay anything. There's no commercials, so there's no commercialization. It's all about getting the facts to the voters. And his face bringing his audience and the attention from the left that they put on him.
Yeah.
His attendance could have actually helped the majority of California's voters realize that this is a legitimate, valid thing, that there are legitimate, valid, viable candidates, and that we don't have to just put up with someone who's embezzling our money that's coming to help us stay alive.
Well, yeah.
All right. Good talk. We're gonna end because we try to keep it nice and sweet. Great conversation, Cassandra. You're right. We're getting better every time, but we're getting better every time because we're bringing on new people who have their own ideas and are willing to call us out and challenge our thinking, and we love it. We are never satisfied with being as corporate as we can look. So here's a closing statement for everybody. I wanted to say thank you to Jason. Jason is not Latino, but he reminded me that this is Hispanic Heritage Month and I need to make a statement. So here's my statement. Might not be what people think it should be. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, and here's what I noticed about Hispanic heritage. I got a flyer from the California Democratic Party, and it said, hey, you're a Latinx voter or Hispanic. And I said, no, I'm not. I don't use the word Latinx. No, maybe it is the right word to use, but I live here in the Central Valley. Latin people are here. No one's using Latinx. Here we go. Pew Research Center. 3% of Latinos use Latinx. So why is this term on all of the brochures from the California government and the California Democratic Party when Latin people don't actually use it? Interesting. Here's a second data point. Here's Newsom. Beginning of this month. Turns out the Democratic Party really guessed wrong and was surprised that they weren't going to have Latinos automatically show up to back up Newsom in the recall. And it caught them off guard. Here you go. Here's even more. Could Latinos, are they going to come out for him? Democrats sweat Latino turnout in the California recall. And here's the thing that got me. The group has been disproportionately sickened and hurt financially during the coronavirus pandemic that upended the political landscape. Latin people were a lot of independent contractors, construction workers, maids, etc. They were like ruined financially. And so here we are in California, where Latin people are a huge percent, the largest ethnic group ever. And yet we have a governor who doesn't get how badly he hurt Latinos and that they're 50-50 on whether they're going to support him. I mean, this is the largest ethnic group in California. This is the party that dominates it, and they were caught off guard because they didn't actually understand where Latinos were politically, even though we have a lot of Latino legislators, which makes me think the California Democratic Party in California is massively out of contact with where Latinos actually are. Some of them are conservative. Some of them are liberal. I did a video at the Freedom Rally where I met another Latin person who had the same last name as me, and we had radically different opinions, and we agreed to disagree. So why are things good when California uses a term Latinos don't know? The governor was caught off guard about Latino voters, even though he punished them, and even though they're the largest electorate. But it's not isolated. Mayorkas was a Californian, and he was hired by Biden to clean up the border and not do the racist, bigoted, white supremacist stuff Donald Trump did. And then Mayorkas does all of the exact same stuff that Trump did on the border and then defends it as a good strategy. And he is from California and appointed to Biden. But let's go here. Here's Joe Biden. He can't even say the guy's name correctly that's from California as he's talking about a new day. So that's what I see. Are you listening to Latin people? Are you using the terms that we want? Do you actually care about us? Are we getting differences? Or we're basically like, hey, we're the Democratic Party. We got your votes. Now go shut up for 4 years and take scraps until we need you again to come up here and act like you're happy minorities. I loved it when Gabrielle Union left some music TV show where she was ranking musical guests. I forget the show. And she left and they go, why'd you leave? And she goes, I was tired of being the happy little minority. Sometimes I wanted to say, you got it wrong. That's ignorant. And I wasn't allowed to do that. So as a progressive, let me say, California, you're failing. Progressive America, you're failing. It's obvious. You look horrible. That's my message to you on Hispanic Heritage Month. You suck at understanding us. You take us for advantage, and it's obvious. So, horrible report card for you, California and America. And I'll catch you next time.
I have something that I want to add for
Please.
the Latin American Appreciation Month also is we do have one small win. Now, I may not be Latin American, but I support this 100%. So the woke community went ahead and tried to cancel Speedy Gonzalez, and the Latin community said, I will not accept this. And they brought it back. So win for the Latin Americans, not
Totally.
Latinx.
Well,
because
that
of
is
the
awesome. That's what I'm talking about is people who are
Speedy Gonzalez is a classic. We love him.
Yeah, I call my mom Speedy Gonzalez, and we laugh.
Exactly.
That's and there was Slowpoke Rodriguez. I get it.
And I'm proud of the Latin community for standing up and saying, you know what? No, this is our cartoon. We love it. It represents us. It doesn't offend us, and we don't care what you have to say. Bring it back.
Because you should have been asking them in the first place before you spoke for them.
Yeah.
Funny. Just like they're using Latinx.
Yeah. So good win on that. Good win on that.
Hey, what about that? Isn't that crazy? You actually asked people what they thought, and then they said,
you guys
no.
saved a classic cartoon from getting completely demoralized and shut down. Like, nobody wanted to see that go away. That's a boomerang classic.
If I may add one tiny little thing on that note, is that if you look at the recall, right, and now, Marcus, you pointed out, wow, the Dems here are really out of touch. I think the Dems all over are really out of touch because Biden couldn't even pronounce Javier Becerra's name appropriately. Didn't even take the time to hear it like 3 times, in quick succession. Becerra, right? No, he couldn't even do that, right? Before going and giving a speech announcing the man's new promotion, huge promotion, no less. With the recall, they go, oh crap, we really need the Latin vote, so let's get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Javier Becerra, the man who Biden couldn't even pronounce his name right, we'll get them to do the same commercial with the same words and just say a script, about stop the Republican recall, right? They got Bernie Sanders, they got Senator Warren, they got so many people that are kind of these out of touch, out of date, just not the right people. If you want the Latin vote, you know who you get? You go out and you go find a bunch of Latino and Latina voters, and you ask them their opinions, and you ask them if they'd say this on camera. And, since you're probably like a multimillionaire working for some political corporation, make sure you pay them and pay them well, not just $10, because you're making millions. And this is California. Oh yeah, and Pepe Le Pew, I gotta say,
our heart breaks for Pepe.
I noticed as a child that the amount of stereotype and the amount of, so you've got Foghorn Leghorn, clearly from the South, calling people boy. I say, boy, better get on back in that cotton field now, boy. Yeah, it's hella racist. The Speedy Gonzalez thing, while Speedy himself may not be like the thing that makes it racist, I think the thing that kind of does is his cousin, who's always drunk on tequila. It's also kind of not really appropriate for a child's cartoon, in my personal
What 90s
opinion.
cartoon was appropriate?
Pepe Le Pew, sexual assault, hello. He's constantly trying to physically molest that cat. And a lot of the times he actually does.
Even as kids, we knew that kind of behavior wasn't wrong. It wasn't teaching anybody to, oh yeah, this is okay, this is what we do. You know, Pepe Le Pew wasn't promoting sexual violence, and Speedy Gonzalez wasn't promoting like alcoholism. It's just, you know, the soft play on like comical stereotypes that are no longer acceptable.
Well, and now the other thing to remember is that there is this French stereotype of they are so amorous and cannot control themselves and this, that, the other. And it kind of paints French people as a bunch of sexual predators. It kind of paints all Latino people as
the guy doesn't make America good, just saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know,
we all got something disparaging on us.
There's an argument on both sides that I think is equally valid. And I think the real thing to do is really discuss and look into, and, you know, if there is a problem with something, to acknowledge it and see if it can be fixed, and if so, how, and then do it.
Can I make a cute statement? I love how our closing statements turned out to be about cartoons.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess SpongeBob is also bad. I don't know what that's about.
Oh, it's not bad, but like it definitely has some adult humor in it. But I mean, most cartoons do. Like if you're going to have to sit there and watch cartoons and movies with your kids all day, there's going to be some jokes for you and some jokes for them. And I don't know when the lines became blurred about we're not allowed to have jokes anymore, but you know, like everyone, honestly, just relax a little bit. They're cartoons.
Well,
you shouldn't be basing your life off those morals either way.
I agree that SpongeBob has some adult humor, but it was done in a way that the adult things aren't like risque adult stuff. Like a great example, the place that they live is called Bikini Bottom, and where one might be naturally thinking of a bikini and the bikini top and the bikini bottom, really what they're referencing is that all of this sea life has mutated from the Bikini Island, Bikini Atoll nuclear testing done by the United States of America. You know, that wiped out that entire island.
All right, well, let's ruin cartoons for children everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't watch
anything. Is it so adult and risque that they shouldn't have named it Bikini Bottom? No, I don't think so.
I mean, I grew up with Ren and Stimpy, so I think my my governor got broken a long time ago on what's acceptable.
Beavis. Yeah.
Yeah, Beavis and Butthead, Ren and Stimpy, they were definitely over the line for
too much.
Proper hood.
And Winnie the Pooh might not have worn pants, but technically he was a teddy bear. Teddy bears don't wear pants.
Okay, but you know, he's going into office settings. He's dealing with female colleagues and he's not wearing pants. So what is the message that we are giving to children? Is it's okay to go to an office setting, and if you're lovable and furry, you can expose yourself. I think of the children.
Kanga and Roo will never be covered.
I point out with Winnie the Pooh, they had the wherewithal to add a shirt onto him. That means that they could and should have had some sort of, you know, clothing on bottom as well.
Yeah.
Well, Eeyore and Tigger and Piglet and Rabbit were naked.
Because he's a teddy bear, they could have, because he's a teddy bear and all the other characters other than the humans, they don't wear clothes because they're animals. Like, you know, it's kind of a given. It's not something that makes children's minds explode and causes an existential crisis in their fragile little minds.
They didn't put cargo shorts on Mufasa, so.
That's a good point.
Yeah, right.
You should have.
Of course, they also didn't put what normally is very visible when you look at a male lion. They didn't
Thank
put
God
that
for
part
that.
either.
I would have been
Yeah,
concerned
so
if that was animated into the movie, to be fair.
it's the middle ground. They did have something that causes some existential, oh my godness, you know, child
Like in
losing
South
their
Park?
father.
When they had Big Gay Al. and
South
he
Park's
comes
not
out
for
the South
kids,
Park
Marcus.
movie. Yeah, but I mean, they did animate it. I mean, during the South Park movie, I mean, I remember seeing
I'm
that
not
in
going
the
to say I
theaters,
didn't
and I was
watch
like,
it as a kid, but my family didn't care, so.
I'd never seen that level of anatomically correct drawings in a cartoon before the South Park movie. So they really put it in your face. They were like, you had no idea what was coming, and then the next scene, the guy's just like, check this out. And you're like, huh?
Yeah, that's wild.
different. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on
The one where
that,
Mr. Garrison becomes Mrs. Garrison.
That was great.
Yeah, had some actual medical procedure footage that they added into it.
oh, they
Not
even
for
had the
faint of
mouse with
heart.
the weenie on his head.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Shocking how accurate representation of mine.
Yeah, the monkey with the multiple asses. That was.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good. They're like, why do you
Yeah,
need that?
Dr.
Why
Noah.
not?
I think this conversation should be more for our
Okay.
Californication.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
you got that was a test. You just got a preview of the Californication, or California, that's going to be happening every Tuesday live at 7:00. We encourage you to join us. Dress casually. Wear that tank top, pajama bottom. Your hat with the pink hat with the things on there. Whatever you want to do. Smoke cigarettes, drink, do whatever. Pray to Satan.
Watch us be silly and talk about cartoons.
Yeah, but we're also going to do
Good.
hardcore
Good.
politics. So you're dealing with a bunch of political junkies. It's going to go that way. All of us think that we can stop at any moment, but we really can't. And we're seeing counselors in the background, but it's going to go nowhere. So
this is the kind of work you take everywhere with you, unfortunately.
yeah, you're hooked. You can't turn it off. I could stop any time. Yeah. Okay, we're going to end a professional note with this commercial. I will check you all later. Thank you all for being here.
Hi, guys. I'm glad to be here. Woogity.